can you jump aboard the riffraff and sail, sail and sail and sail?
The incident that provoked that book was a real little conversation that I had with a girlfriend when I was 10 or 11. And she said, God did not exist. And I said, oh, yes, he does, you know. But she had proof, which was, she said, well, I know he doesn't exist because I have prayed to him for 2 years for blue eyes. And when she said that, I turned to look at her, and two things came at once. One was, God, she would be awful if the wish had been granted. She'd look awful. But the second thing, or maybe this was the first thing, was for the first time I noticed, mind you, I'm 10 or 11, how astonishingly beautiful she was. But there was this girl with these high cheekbones, these almond eyes, this perfectly black as pitch, and I just was sort of stunned. But later, as an adult, I was saying, well, how did she get that way? How did she get that way? Where she really was praying 2 years in the life of a child on your knees for blue eyes? That's a big time commitment. And that's what she did. It was that important. If she had only had blue eyes, it would be a loving world. So I didn't have the same racial self-loathing ever. But I had this sort of family that thought all white people were immoral and vaguely corrupt and that we were all wonderful and perfect.
Context of White Supremacy. Justice, Gus T Renegade, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy racism. Today's date, Friday, July 20th, 2012, so I have been told. We'll be back on tomorrow. That would be Saturday, July 21st, the compensatory call-in, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Definitely tune in, call. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts, observations, research, experiments, codified suggestions on how best to replace the system of white supremacy with a system of justice immediately. If you're experiencing difficulties on the job, I definitely think a lot of non-white people out there are having problems on the job, giving more of us an opportunity to just compare and observe, like, oh, I thought I was the only one who was struggling with this on the job, and to kind of brainstorm. Not that, I'm saying I'm an expert or anyone else here. Definitely, as I've always said, situations on the job, you want to use your best judgment on what you think would be the best thing to do. As always on the job, you want to be solving problems without creating new problems. But that said, I know there are a lot of people out there who are having difficulties on the job. If you want to call in and kind of brainstorm some of that, definitely the Saturday program would be a good time for that. So tune in tomorrow evening at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. This Sunday, we will have, it is a pair. Again, I'm not sure about their racial classification. We'll have to get that cleared up as well. But they have been doing work following enforcement officials in New York when they do their stop and frisks, videotaping them just to make sure that they are not accosting, terrorizing black and non-white people. And the enforcement officers responded by putting up mug shots. Basically, they're like bounty posters with these individuals' faces on the posters as though they are some sort of criminals. Anywho, they'll be here Sunday afternoon. Be looking forward to hearing from them. It'll be 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific to hear more about their work. I'll be curious to hear about the laws. I do think you can learn a lot. You can use laws to your advantage. Just knowing if you have the ability in your area to record enforcement officers. I know there had been a big push to change legislation around that so that you cannot record officers But yeah, it'll be good to hear from them, see if they have info on all that. Anywho, give me 1 second. I want to make sure my switchboard is loaded and working correctly. Context of White Supremacy. Again, we'll be back Sunday, just so we don't have dead air. We'll be back tomorrow and Sunday. We will be continuing the entire month of July doing the programs centering around sexual abuse. That unfortunately is going to come up in the Bluest Eye as we move forward as well. But we will be having more programs centered around that as well. Next Thursday, Darkness Tonight organization. They do research around sexual abuse, things parents can do to prevent the abuse from happening in the first place, as well as what you can do to stop the abuse, things you can be doing to work with your child. Also recommended by Sylvia Coleman, her website, blacksurvivors.org. But the sexual abuse is going to come up in this book also, unfortunately. Anywho, before we get to Bluest Eye, I will encourage folks to dial in. This is again supposed to be book club. Exchanging views, dialoguing about the book. I do want to emphasize, I know there are a lot of things going on, the Colorado shooting and just crazy week on the plantation as usual, but this is not the call-in. So this conversation is supposed to be focused, centered on the book. Now, if there's something that is relating to the book and you can see a parallel, that's fine, but it should be centered on the book. We shouldn't be looking for ways to just go off on a tangent and be talking about something that has nothing to do with this book, because in my view there's so many things happening. There's so much that can be said about each sentence, each section of this book, that I really want to make sure that we are being focused in our commentary on the book. That said, I do want to hear from folks. I really enjoyed the dialogue last week and hope that we'll have more folks participating this time around. The number to dial is 760-569-7676, and the code is 564943#. Press *6 if you're on that line. You have questions or comments. If you're on the Talk Shoe line, it is *8. Now, I will break my rule, but I'm the host, so I can break the rule. I will break my rule quickly. We certainly can take more time to chat about this tomorrow on the call-in, but just because it just happened, the shooting in Colorado, I'm sure folks have been paying attention. That has been major news around the world. At least 12 people reported to have been killed at the midnight showing of Dark Knight, latest installment in the Batman series. I just want to say, same thing, I just put it on my Facebook page. I don't feel bad about this. I didn't shed any tears about this. I didn't cry about this. They reported, I think a 6-month-old was one of the victims. I didn't feel bad about that. We are in a war. I just put it on my Facebook page. You will have, I suspect, easy, at least 12 black people will be killed before we conclude this program this evening. So I don't feel bad about that. We're in a war. We are on a planet where racist man, racist woman, racist child, they celebrate death on a regular basis. I'm not going to mope and feel bad because some white person, some white terrorist went and decided that he was going to kill 12 people and wound, I think they said 70 other folks at a movie showing. Now, the one thing about this that I will say that I did find especially nauseating, in addition to all the white people coming out and pretending to be so shook up about this, and I don't understand how this sort of thing could happen, and oh my gosh, what is wrong with people? All that aside, the thing in my view that additionally reveals the hypocrisy of white people. These are the greatest terrorists in the known universe. They do stuff like this on a massive scale, going out and slaughtering large numbers of people. That's their whole history, and then celebrating the slaughters. I just saw this before we went live, which is why I'm mentioning it now. they had, they have trailers, right? You go to the movies and they show you little snippets from movies that are going to be coming out in the next couple weeks or might be out right now. One of the trailers in the film Dark Knight, where the shooting took place, one of the trailers is for a film called Gangster Squad, right? I don't think it's out yet, but Sean Penn is in it, Nick Nolte, some other big name actors. Now, in this little 2-minute trailer, this film is all about white people, gangs going out shooting up people. That's the whole trailer, right? White people going out and shooting up people left and right, gunning down folks, beating up people, blood all over the place. That's the whole trailer. When you get to the end of this little 2-minute snippet trailer for the film Gangster Squad, there is a scene where white people are in a movie theater. On the stage, they take out rifles, firearms, and begin gunning people down in a movie theater. I just put it on my Facebook page. You can see the trailer. You can go to YouTube and just put in Gangster Squad trailer. You probably don't have to do that. You can probably just do Gangster Squad and you can watch it on YouTube in high definition. But when you get to the end of the trailer, you will see this scene. And it's actually in there twice. You see one scene in the beginning of the trailer where the white people are standing out in front of the theater shooting people down. And then as you watch and you get to the end, now they're actually on the stage at the movie theater and they're gunning people down in the theater. This is in the opening for Dark Knight. So when you go see Dark Knight, or at least before the shooting in Colorado, you go see Dark Knight, you would see this trailer when you see the film for Dark Knight. Now I'm sitting here looking at this and like, now come on. I'm supposed to feel bad. I'm supposed to be shook up. And I'm supposed to believe the white people out pretending, oh, I can't believe this happened. Where are people getting these ideas from? What's wrong with people? Yeah, right. And they even addressed this. This is on Good Morning America, where they said the white people at Warner Brothers, they're scrambling, trying to remove the trailer for Gangster Squad from all of the showings of Dark Knight, as it would be an embarrassment and just inappropriate to have that scene playing since the shooting in Colorado just happened. So maybe you won't see that if you should happen to be at the theaters. At any rate, if there's a lesson to be learned from all this, for me, it just emphasizes again, white people are extremely dangerous. You really do not want to be spending time around them if you can help it. And reinforcing what I said yesterday, don't go to the movies. You don't want to be spending your money. Anything could happen while you're out there. You shouldn't be investing your money on that foolishness anyway. But definitely, you do not want to be going out to the theaters. Just any sort of craziness could happen. You are on a planet of terrorism. This sort of thing is supposed to happen. This is not anomalous. This is supposed to happen. I hope this will further encourage black people, non-white people, save your coins, stay at home, watch it online, keep your money in your pocket, keep your time, dedicate your time to doing something else, and stay as safe as you can on the plantation. Moving forward, Bluest Eye, Toni Morrison, second segment. There were a couple folks who had comments before we get to playing the audiobook. There were a couple folks who had comments related to what we discussed last week. Comment number 1. I won't say the names, even though they did put this stuff publicly, but I still won't say the names. Number 1. Black male, he said, I got to listen to this program. He's talking about the program from last week. I got to listen to this program today, and the first chapter, side 1 of the tape, the out of the house part. That's where Toni Morrison, she's talking about the devastation around being put outside, not having any place to go. Anyway, the put out of the house part, how it was described. It reminded me of when I was young and worrying about whether the bills would get paid this month, especially the utility bill. It didn't matter what season. When the lights go out, the lights go out. This would stick with me all day, everywhere I went. That makes it so hard to learn. Besides, why should any child have to worry about the bills? Good grief. Indeed, I think, unfortunately, many non-white people worldwide can relate to that. Comment number 2. also from a non-white male. Greetings, Gus. I am following along the study sessions for the Bluest Eye and would like to inject the contrast at the beginning of the Dick and Jane primer. If one assumes Dick and Jane are white, I certainly do, this is a contrast to the non-white existence, family life of the Breedloves, and part of the reason for the self-hate that exists in the black community. Also, Pecola's desire for blue eyes are not only for appearance, how she is perceived, but also how she sees her surroundings. I could not agree more. Excellent observations from our listeners. The sound clip at the beginning, that was Toni Morrison commenting on the Bluest Eye. She's done a lot of interviews, and I had the pleasure to try to catch some of the interviews that she's done over the years, and that clip was just stunning. It was stunning for so many reasons. Just to think of a 10-year-old wishing for 2 years, praying to the Creator for 2 years for blue eyes. Stunning. As she said, from a child's perspective, from a 10-year-old's perspective, like 2 years is, a significant, that's like 20% of her life. I mean, that's major, just to kind of, I guess, put that in some sort of perspective. If you were 40, that would be you spending 8 years doing something, committed to something every day. That's major. Just astounding. And I have met black people who have a very similar experience. And I mean, through and through. I remember a black female when I lived in California, and to this day, I think she's one of the most gorgeous females that I've ever seen. And she was a model, no less. I think many people saw her and were just like, my God, she is, one of those people that you would have to pause for a moment just to appreciate how attractive she was. I would almost say like kind of distracting, at least being a male. Someone having her in front of you, it would be difficult to not continually go back to, wow, she is gorgeous. And everything about her was gorgeous. She was darker complexion, and we went out, I think, to get tea or something. And we were just chatting it up, and she was talking about growing up and how she used to come home and cry every day. And she was saying, this is like 5, 6, 7, really young, that she would come home and cry every day about being dark-skinned and how she wished she was lighter and how she hated her skin complexion. And I'm just looking at her like, my God, this is one of the most gorgeous females I've ever seen. Man, I don't even know what to say. And that is replicated over and over and over. That is a result. When I posted what I had to say about Colorado and not feeling bad about the shooting, I feel bad about that. You've got millions of black people. That's their experience. That's the world in which they live, feeling bad about themselves from the day that they were on this planet. That's the experience. That's what I feel bad about. It's too many black people where we have no compassion for other black people who are traumatized, terrorized in every sense of the word, feeling that they are the most hideous and ugly thing in the universe, and wondering, are we going to have electricity? Are we going to have food? Am I going to have a place to sleep tonight? Am I going to have something to eat? That's the experience for millions of black people, and has been for the duration of white supremacy. And I'm supposed to feel bad for some white people who went to see a movie that was all about violence and shooting and killing and blowing up people. I'm supposed to feel bad because that happened for real at the theater. Anywho, we will proceed. The Bluest Eye. This is segment 2. I don't really know how these are laid out since I have the audiobook. So, I have the book, so I can kind of look at it and match the chapters up, but it's a little more challenging for me to try to match up where we are. I looked at the book, and I think we're still very early in the book. I think we're around page 50 or so in the book. If you want to get the book, if you want to read and that sort of thing, but I think we're around page 50, maybe a little bit before. Page 50 in the book, in the Bluest Eye. I will play the first segment of the audio clip, and we can do it the way we did it last week. If you have questions, if you have comments, we can pause and you can comment right then, or if you want to wait until the segment ends, we could do that as well. It'll be up to you all. The number to dial is 760-569-7676, and the code is 564943 pound. 760-569-7676, and the code is 564943 pound. Press *6 if you have a question. If you're on the talk shoe line, it's *8. If you have something you want to get your comment in right then, put your hand up. I'll keep an eye on the switchboard. We can pause. You can comment right then. If you'd prefer to wait until the segment ends, we can do that as well. The segments, they're about 40 minutes. I think I'm probably just going to let it ride and play the whole 40 minutes so we can all put our feet up, listen, take notes, and be ready to share. Again, this is not supposed to be just Gus running off at the mouth. This is supposed to be a book club. People commenting on what stood out to them, what they think is important. So we will begin. This is, I guess, segment 3 from the audiobook, Toni Morrison's extremely important book, The Bluest Eye.
The Bluest Eye, Cassette 2. Each night, without fail, she prayed for blue eyes. Fervently, for a year she had prayed. Although somewhat discouraged, she was not without hope. To have something as wonderful as that happen would take a long, long time. Thrown in this way into the binding conviction that only a miracle could relieve her, she would never know her beauty. She would see only what there was to see, the eyes of other people. She walks down Garden Avenue to a small grocery store which sells penny candy. 3 pennies are in her shoe, slipping back and forth between the sock and the inner sole. With each step, she feels the painful press of the coins against her foot, a sweet, endurable, even cherished irritation full of promise and delicate security. There is plenty of time to consider what to buy. Now, however, she moves down an avenue gently buffeted by the familiar and therefore loved images. The dandelions at the base of the telephone pole. Why, she wonders, do people call them weeds? She thought they were pretty. But grown-ups say, Miss Dunyan keeps her yard so nice, not a dandelion anywhere. Hunky women in black babushkas go into the field with baskets to pull them up. But they do not want the yellow heads, only the jagged leaves. They make dandelion soup, dandelion wine. Nobody loves the head of a dandelion. Maybe because they are so many, strong and soon. There was the sidewalk crack, shaped like a Y, and the other one that lifted the concrete up from the dirt floor. Frequently, her sloughing step had made her trip over that one. Skates would go well over this sidewalk. Old it was and smooth. It made the wheels glide evenly with a mild whir. The newly paved walks were bumpy and uncomfortable, and the sound of skate wheels on new walks was grating. These and other inanimate things she saw and experienced, they were real to her. She knew them. They were the codes and touchstones of the world, capable of translation and possession. She owned the crack that made her stumble. She owned the clumps of dandelions, whose white heads last fall she had blown away, whose yellow heads this fall she peered into. And owning them made her part of the world, and the world a part of her. She climbs 4 wooden steps to the door of Jakubowski's fresh veg, meat, and sundry store. A bell tinkles as she opens it. Standing before the counter, she looks at the array of candies. All Mary Janes, she decides. 3 for a penny. the resistant sweetness that breaks open at last to deliver peanut butter, the oil and salt which complement the sweet pull of caramel. A peal of anticipation unsettles her stomach. She pulls off her shoe and takes out the 3 pennies. The gray head of Mr. Jakubowski looms up over the counter. He urges his eyes out of his thoughts to encounter her. Blue eyes, blear dropped. Slowly, like Indian summer moving imperceptibly toward fall, he looks toward her. Somewhere between retina and object, between vision and view, his eyes draw back, hesitate, and hover. At some fixed point in time and space, he senses that he need not waste the effort of a glance. He does not see her, because for him there is nothing to see. How can a 52-year-old white immigrant storekeeper, with the taste of potatoes and beer in his mouth, his mind honed on the doe-eyed Virgin Mary, his sensibilities blunted by a permanent awareness of loss, see a little black girl? Nothing in his life even suggested that the feat was possible, not to say desirable or necessary. Yeah. She looks up at him and sees the vacuum where curiosity ought to lodge. And something more. The total absence of human recognition. The glazed separateness. She doesn't know what keeps his glance suspended, perhaps because he is grown or a man and she's a little girl. But she has seen interest, disgust, even anger in grown male eyes, yet this vacuum is not new to her. It has an edge. Somewhere in the bottom lid is the distaste. She has seen it lurking in the eyes of all white people. So, the distaste must be for her blackness. All things in her are flux and anticipation, but her blackness is static and dread. And it is the blackness that accounts for, that creates the vacuum edged with distaste in white eyes. She points her finger at the Mary Janes, a little black shaft of finger, its tip pressed on the display window. The quietly inoffensive assertion of a black child's attempt to communicate with a white adult. Them. The word is more sigh than sense. What, these? These? Phlegm and impatience mingle in his voice. She shakes her head, her fingertip fixed on the spot which, in her view at any rate, identifies the Mary Janes. He cannot see her view. The angle of his vision, the slant of her finger, makes it incomprehensible to him. His lumpy red hand plops around in the glass casing like the agitated head of a chicken outraged by the loss of its body. Christ, can't you talk? His fingers brush the Mary Janes. She nods. Well, why'd you say so? 1? How many? Pecola unfolds her fist, showing the 3 pennies. He scoots 3 Mary Janes toward her, 3 yellow rectangles in each packet. She holds the money toward him. He hesitates, not wanting to touch her hand. She doesn't know how to move the finger of her right hand from the display counter or how to get the coins out of her left hand. Finally, he reaches over and takes the pennies from her hand. His nails graze her damp palm. Outside, Pecola feels the inexplicable shame ebb. Dandelions. A dart of affection leaps out of her to them. But they do not look at her, and do not send love back. She thinks they are ugly, they are weeds. Preoccupied with that revelation, she trips on the sidewalk crack. Anger stirs and wakes in her. It opens its mouth, and like a hot-mouthed puppy, laps up the dredges of her shame. Anger is better. There is a sense of being in anger, a reality and presence, an awareness of worth. It is a lovely surging. Her thoughts fall back to Mr. Yakubowski's eyes, his phlegmy voice. The anger will not hold. The puppy is too easily surfeited. Its thirst too quickly quenched, it sleeps. The shame wells up again, its muddy rivulet seeping into her eyes. What to do before the tears come? She remembers the Mary Jane. Each pale yellow wrapper has a picture on it, a picture of little Mary Jane, for whom the candy is named. Smiling white face, blonde hair in gentle disarray, blue eyes looking at her out of a world of clean comfort. The eyes are petulant, mischievous. To Pecola, they are simply pretty. She eats the candy, and its sweetness is good. To eat the candy is somehow to eat the eyes. Eat Mary Jane, love Mary Jane, be Mary Jane. 3 pennies had bought her 9 lovely orgasms with Mary Jane. Lovely Mary Jane, for whom a candy is named. 3 whores live in the apartment above the Breedloves storefront: China, Poland, and Miss Marie. Pecola loved them, visited them, and ran their errands. They in turn did not despise her. On an October morning, the morning of the stove-lid triumph, Pecola climbed the stairs to their apartment. Even before the door was opened to her tapping, she could hear Poland singing, her voice sweet and hard like new strawberries. I got blues in my meal bag, blues up on the shelf. I got blues in my meal bag, blues up on the shelf. Blues in my bedroom 'cause I'm sleeping by myself. Hi, Dumpling, where's your socks? Marie seldom called Pecola the same thing twice, but invariably her epithets were fond ones chosen from menus and dishes that were forever uppermost in her mind. Hello, Miss Marie. Hello, Miss China. Hello, Miss Poland. You heard me. Where are your socks? You as bare-legged as a yard dog. I couldn't find any. Couldn't find any. Must be something in your house that loves socks. China chuckled. Whenever something was missing, Marie attributed its disappearance to something in the house that loved it. There's something in this house that loves brassieres, she would say with alarm. Poland and China were getting ready for the evening. Poland, forever ironing, forever singing. China, sitting on a pale green kitchen chair, forever and forever curling her hair. Marie never got ready. The women were friendly, but slow to begin talk. Pecola always took the initiative with Marie, who, once inspired, was difficult to stop. How come you got so many boyfriends, Miss Marie? Boyfriend? Boyfriend? Chillin'. I ain't seen a boy since 1927. You didn't see none then. China stuck the hot curlers into a tin of new Nile hairdressing. The oil hissed at the touch of the hot metal. How come, Miss Marie? Pecola insisted. How come what? How come I ain't seen a boy since 1927? Because there ain't been no boys since then. That's when they stopped. Folks started getting born old. You mean that's when you got old? China said. I ain't never got old, just fat. Same thing. You think 'cause you skinny, folks think you young, you'd make a haint by a girl. And you look like the north side of a southbound mule. All I know is them bandy little legs of yours is every bit as old as mine. Don't worry about my bandy legs. That's the first thing they push aside. All 3 of the women laughed. Marie threw back her head. From deep inside, her laughter came like the sound of many rivers, freely, deeply, muddily, heading for the room of an open sea. China giggled spastically. Each gasp seemed to be yanked out of her by an unseen hand jerking an unseen string. Poland, who seldom spoke unless she was drunk, laughed without sound. When she was sober, she hummed mostly and chanted blues songs, of which she knew many. Pecola fingered the fringe of a scarf that lay on the back of a sofa. I never seen nobody with as many boyfriends as you got, Miss Marie. How come they all love you? Marie opened a bottle of root beer. What else they gonna do? They know I'm rich and good looking. They wants to put their toes in my curly hair and get at my money. You rich, Miss Marie? Puddin'. I got money's mammy. Where'd you get it from? You don't do no work. Yep, said China. Where you get it from? Hoover give it me. I did him a favor once for the FBI. What'd you do? I did him a favor. They wanted to catch this crook, you see, name of Johnny. He was as low down as they come. We know that. China arranged a curl. The FBI wanted him bad. He killed more people than TB, and if you crossed him, whoa, Jesus, he'd run you as long as there was ground. Well, I was little and cute then. No more than 90 pounds soaking wet. You ain't never been soaking wet, China said. Well, you ain't never been dry. Shut up. Let me tell you, sweetening. To tell it true, I was the only one could handle him. He'd go out and rob a bank or kill some people, and I'd say to him soft like, Johnny, you shouldn't do that. And he'd say he just had to bring me pretty things, lace drawers and all. And every Saturday, we'd get a case of beer and fry up some fish. We'd fry it in meal and egg batter, you know, and when it was all brown and crisp, not hard though, we'd break open that cold beer. Marie's eyes went soft as the memory of just such a meal sometime somewhere transfixed her. All her stories were subject to breakdown at the descriptions of food. Pecola saw Marie's teeth settling down into the back of crisp sea bass, saw the fat fingers putting back into her mouth tiny flakes of white hot meat that had escaped from her lips. She heard the pop of the beer bottle cap, smelled the acridness of the first stream of vapor, felt the cold beeriness hit the tongue. She ended the daydream long before Marie. But what about the money? She asked. China hooted. She's making like she's the lady in red that told on Dillinger. Dillinger wouldn't have come near you less'n he was gone hunting in Africa and shoot you for a hippo. Well, this hippo had a ball back in Chicago. Whoa, Jesus, 99. How come you always say, whoa, Jesus, and a number? Pecola had long wanted to know. Because my mama taught me never to cuss. Did she teach you not to drop your drawers? China asked. Didn't have none, said Marie. Never saw a pair of drawers till I was 15, when I left Jackson and was doing day work in Cincinnati. My white lady gave me some old ones of hers. I thought they was some kind of stocking cap. I put it on my head when I dusted. When she saw me, she like to fell out. You must have been one dumb somebody. China lit a cigarette and cooled her iron. How'd I know? And what's the use of putting on something you got to keep taking off all the time? Dewey never let me keep them on long enough to get used to them. Dewey who? This was a somebody new to Pecola. Dewey who? Chicken? You never heard me tell a Dewey? Marie was shocked by her negligence. No, ma'am. Oh, honey, you missed half your life. Whoa, Jesus, 195. You talking about smooth. I met him when I was 14. We ran away and lived together like married for 3 years. You know all those clinker-tops you see running up here? 50 of them in a bowl wouldn't make a Dewey Prince's ankle bone. Oh, Lord, how that man loved me. China arranged a fingerful of hair into a bang effect. Then why he left you to sell tail? Girl, when I found out I could sell it, that somebody would pay cold cash for it, you could have knocked me over with a feather. Poland began to laugh soundlessly. Me too. My auntie whipped me good that first time when I told her I didn't get no money. I said, money? For what? He didn't owe me nothing, she said. The hell he didn't. They all dissolved in laughter. 3 merry gargoyles. 3 merry harridans, amused by a long-ago time of ignorance. They didn't belong to those generations of prostitutes created in novels, with great and generous hearts, dedicated because of the horror of circumstance, to ameliorating the luckless, barren life of men, taking money incidentally and humbly for their understanding. Nor were they from that sensitive breed of young girl, gone wrong at the hands of fate, forced to cultivate an outward brittleness in order to protect her springtime from further shock, but knowing full well she was cut out for better things and could make the right man happy. Neither were they the sloppy, inadequate whores who, unable to make a living at it alone, turned to drug consumption and traffic, or pimps, to help complete their scheme of self-destruction, avoiding suicide only to punish the memory of some absent father, or to sustain the misery of some silent mother. Except for Marie's fabled love of Dewey Prince, these women hated men, all men, without shame, apology, or discrimination. They abused their visitors with a scorn grown mechanical from use. Black men, white men, Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, Jews, Poles, whatever. All were inadequate and weak. All came under their jaundiced eyes and were the recipients of their disinterested wrath. They took delight in cheating them. On one occasion, the town well knew, they lured a Jew up the stairs, pounced on him, all 3, held him up by the heels, shook everything out of his pants pockets, and threw him out of the window. Neither did they have respect for women who, although not their colleagues, so to speak, nevertheless deceived their husbands, regularly or irregularly, it made no difference. Sugar-coated whores, they called them, and did not yearn to be in their shoes. Their only respect was for what they would have described as good Christian-colored women. The woman whose reputation was spotless, and who tended to her family, who didn't drink or smoke or run around. These women had their undying, if covert, affection. They would sleep with their husbands and take their money, but always with a vengeance. Nor were they protective and solicitous of youthful innocence. They looked back on their own youth as a period of ignorance, and regretted that they had not made more of it. They were not young girls in whores' clothing, or whores regretting their loss of innocence. They were whores in whores' clothing, whores who had never been young and had no word for innocence. With Pecola, they were as free as they were with each other. Marie concocted stories for her because she was a child, but the stories were breezy and rough. If Pecola had announced her intention to live the life they did, they would not have tried to dissuade her or voiced any alarm. "You and Dewey Prince have any children, Miss Marie?" Yeah, we had some." Marie fidgeted. She pulled a bobby pin from her hair and began to pick her teeth. That meant she didn't want to talk anymore. Pecola went to the window and looked down at the empty street. A tuft of grass had forced its way up through a crack in the sidewalk, only to meet a raw October wind. She thought of Dewey Prince and how he loved Miss Marie. What did love feel like, she wondered. How do grown-ups act when they love each other? Eat fish together? Into her eyes came the picture of Charlie and Mrs. Breedlove in bed. He making sounds as though he were in pain, as though something had him by the throat and wouldn't let go. Terrible as his noises were, they were not nearly as bad as the no noise at all from her mother. It was as though she was not even there. Maybe that was love. Choking sounds and silence. Turning her eyes from the window, Pecola looked at the women. China had changed her mind about the bangs and was arranging a small but sturdy pompadour. She was adept in creating any number of hairstyles, but each one left her with a pinched and harassed look. Then she applied makeup heavily. Now she gave herself surprised eyebrows and a cupid bow mouth. Later, she would make oriental eyebrows and an evilly slashed mouth. Poland, in her sweet strawberry voice, began another song. I know a boy who is sky soft brown. I know a boy who is sky soft brown. The dirt leaves for joy when his feet touch the ground. His strut is a peacock, his eye is burning brass. His smile is sorghum syrup dripping snow sweet to the last. I know a boy who is sky soft brown. Marie sat shelling peanuts and popping them into her mouth. Pecola looked and looked at the women. Were they real? Marie belched, softly, purringly, lovingly. Winter. My daddy's face is a study. Winter moves into it and presides there. His eyes become a cliff of snow threatening to avalanche. His eyebrows bend like black limbs of leafless trees. His skin takes on the pale, cheerless yellow of winter sun. For a jaw, he has the edges of a snowbound field, dotted with stubble. His high forehead is the frozen sweep of the Erie, hiding currents of gelid thoughts that eddy in darkness. Wolf killer turned hawk fighter, he worked night and day to keep one from the door and the other from under the windowsills. A Vulcan guarding the flames, he gives us instructions about which doors to keep closed or opened for proper distribution of heat. Lays kindling by, discusses qualities of coal, and teaches us how to rake, feed, and bank the fire. And he will not unrazor his lips until spring. Winter tightened our heads with a band of cold and melted our eyes. We put pepper in the feet of our stockings, Vaseline on our faces, and stared through dark icebox mornings at 4 stewed prunes, slippery lumps of oatmeal, and cocoa with a roof of skin. But mostly, we waited for spring, when there could be gardens. By the time this winter had stiffened itself into a hateful knot that nothing could loosen, something did loosen it. Or rather, someone. A someone who splintered the knot into silver threads that tangled us, netted us, made us long for the dull chafe of the previous boredom. This disruptor of seasons was a new girl in school named Maureen Peal, a high yellow dream child, with long brown hair braided into 2 lynch ropes that hung down her back. She was rich, at least by our standards, as rich as the richest of the white girls, swaddled in comfort and care. The quality of her clothes threatened to derange Frida and me. Patent leather shoes with buckles, a cheaper version of which we got only at Easter, and which had disintegrated by the end of May. Fluffy sweaters the color of lemon drops tucked into skirts with pleats so orderly they astounded us. Brightly colored knee socks with white borders, a brown velvet coat trimmed in white rabbit fur, and a matching muff. There was a hint of spring in her slow green eyes, something summery in her complexion, and a rich autumn ripeness in her walk. She enchanted the entire school. When teachers called on her, they smiled encouragingly. Black boys didn't trip her in the halls. White boys didn't stone her. White girls didn't suck their teeth when she was assigned to be their work partners. Black girls stepped aside when she wanted to use the sink in the girls' toilet, and their eyes genuflected under sliding lids. She never had to search for anyone to eat with in the cafeteria. They flocked to the table of her choice, where she opened fastidious lunches, shaming our jelly-stained bread with egg salad sandwiches cut into 4 dainty squares, pink frosted cupcakes, stalks of celery and carrots, proud dark apples. She even bought and liked white milk. Frida and I were bemused, irritated, and fascinated by her. We looked hard for flaws to restore our equilibrium, but had to be content at first with uglying up her name, changing Maureen Peal to meringue pie. Later, a minor epiphany was ours when we discovered that she had a dog tooth, A charming one to be sure, but a dog-tooth nonetheless. And when we found out that she had been born with 6 fingers on each hand, and that there was a little bump where each extra one had been removed, we smiled. They were small triumphs, but we took what we could get, snickering behind her back and calling her 6-fingered dog-tooth meringue pie. But we had to do it alone, for none of the other girls would cooperate with our hostility. They adored her. When she was assigned a locker next to mine, I could indulge my jealousy 4 times a day. My sister and I both suspected that we were secretly prepared to be her friend, if she would let us. But I knew it would be a dangerous friendship, for when my eye traced the white border patterns of those Kelly green knee socks, and I felt the pull and slack of my brown stockings, I wanted to kick her. And when I thought of the unearned haughtiness in her eyes, I plotted accidental slammings of locker doors on her hand. As locker friends, however, we got to know each other a little, and I was even able to hold a sensible conversation with her without visualizing her falling off a cliff or giggling my way into what I thought was a clever insult. One day, while I waited at the locker for Frida, she joined me. Hi. Hi. Waiting for your sister? Uh-huh. Which way do you go home? Down 21st Street to Broadway? Why don't you go down 22nd Street? 'Cause I live on 21st Street. Oh. I can walk that way, I guess. Partly, anyway. Free country. Frida came toward us, her brown stockings straining at the knees because she had tucked the toe under to hide a hole in the foot. Maureen's gonna walk part way with us. Frida and I exchanged glances, her eyes begging my restraint, mine promising nothing. It was a false spring day, which, like Maureen, had pierced the shell of a deadening winter. There were puddles, mud, and an inviting warmth that deluded us. The kind of day on which we draped our coats over our heads, left our galoshes in school, and came down with croup the following day. We always responded to the slightest change in weather, the most minute shifts in time of day. Long before seeds were stirring, Frida and I were scruffing and poking at the earth, swallowing air, drinking rain. As we emerged from the school with Maureen, we began to molt immediately. We put our headscarves in our coat pockets and our coats on our heads. I was wondering how to maneuver Maureen's fur muff into a gutter when a commotion in the playground distracted us. A group of boys was circling and holding at bay a victim, Pecola Breedlove. Bay Boy, Woodrow Kane, Buddy Wilson, Junebug, like a necklace of semi-precious stones they surrounded her. Heady with the smell of their own musk, thrilled by the easy power of a majority, they gaily harassed her. Blackie Mo, your daddy sleeps naked. Blackie Mo, your daddy sleeps naked. Blackie Mo. They had extemporized a verse, made up of 2 insults about matters over which the victim had no control, the color of her skin, and speculations on the sleeping habits of an adult, wildly fitting in its incoherence. That they themselves were black, or that their own father had similarly relaxed habits, was irrelevant. It was their contempt for their own blackness that gave the first ill its teeth. They seemed to have taken all of their smoothly cultivated ignorance, their exquisitely learned self-hatred, their elaborately designed hopelessness, and sucked it all up into a fiery cone of scorn that had burned for ages in the hollows of their minds, cooled, and spilled over lips of outrage, consuming whatever was in its path. They danced a macabre ballet around the victim whom, for their own sake, they were prepared to sacrifice to the flaming pit. Blackie Mo, your daddy sleeps naked. Ta-ta, ta-ta, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. Pecola edged around the circle crying. She had dropped her notebook and covered her eyes with her hands. We watched, afraid they might notice us and turn their energies our way. Then Frida, with set lips and Mama's eyes, snatched her coat from her head and threw it on the ground. She ran toward them and brought her books down on Woodrow Kane's head. The circle broke. Woodrow Kane grabbed his head. "Hey, girl! You cut that out, you hear?" I'd never heard Frida's voice so loud and clear. Maybe because Frida was taller than he was. Maybe because he saw her eyes. Maybe because he had lost interest in the game, or maybe because he had a crush on Frida. In any case, Woodrow looked frightened just long enough to give her more courage. "Leave her alone, or I'm going to tell everybody what you did." Woodrow didn't answer. He just walled his eyes. Bay Boy piped up. "Go on, girl. Ain't nobody bothering you." "You shut up, bullethead." I had found my tongue. "Who you calling bullethead?" "I'm calling you bullethead, bullethead." Frida took Pecola's hand. "Come on. You want a fat lip?" Bay Boy drew back his fist at me. "Yeah, give me one of yours. You gonna get one." Maureen appeared at my elbow, and the boys seemed reluctant to continue under her springtime eyes so wide with interest. They buckled in confusion, not willing to beat up 3 girls under her watchful gaze. So they listened to a budding male instinct that told them to pretend we were unworthy of their attention. "Come on, man. Yeah, come on. We ain't got time to fool with them." Grumbling a few disinterested epithets, they moved away. I picked up Pecola's notebook and Frida's coat, and the 4 of us left the playground. "Old bullet head. He's always picking on girls." Frida agreed with me. Miss Forrester said he was incorrigible. Really? I didn't know what that meant, but it had enough of a doom sound in it to be true of Bay Boy. While Frida and I clucked on about the near fight, Maureen, suddenly animated, put her velvet-sleeved arm through Pecola's and began to behave as though they were the closest of friends. "I just moved here. My name is Maureen Peal. What's yours?" "Pecola." "Pecola? Wasn't that the name of the girl in Imitation of Life?" "I don't know. What is that?" "The picture show, you know, where this mulatto girl hates her mother because she is black and ugly, but then cries at the funeral. It was real sad. Everybody cries in it. Claudette Colbert, too." "Oh." Pecola's voice was no more than a sigh. "Anyway, her name was Pecola, too. She was so pretty. When it comes back, I'm going to see it again. My mother has seen it 4 times. Frida and I walked behind them, surprised at Maureen's friendliness to Pecola, but pleased. Maybe she wasn't so bad after all. Frida had put her coat back on her head, and the 2 of us, so draped, trotted along enjoying the warm breeze and Frida's heroics. "You're in my gym class, aren't you?" Maureen asked Pecola. "Yes." "Miss Erkmeister's legs sure are bold. I bet she thinks they're cute. How come she gets to wear real shorts and we have to wear those old bloomers? I want to die every time I put them on." Pecola smiled, but didn't look at Maureen. "Hey!" Maureen stopped short. "There's an Isoles. Want some ice cream? I have money." She unzipped a hidden pocket in her muff and pulled out a multi-folded dollar bill. I forgave her those knee socks. "My uncle sued Isoles," Maureen said to the 3 of us. "He sued the Isoles in Akron. They said he was disorderly, and that was why they wouldn't serve him, but a friend of his, a policeman, came in and bared the witness, so the suit went through." "What's a suit?" "It's when you can beat them up if you want to and won't anybody do nothing. Our family does it all the time. We believe in suits." At the entrance to Isoles, Maureen turned to Frida and me, asking, "You all going to buy some ice cream?" We looked at each other. "No," Frida said. Maureen disappeared into the store with Pecola. Frida looked placidly down the street. I opened my mouth, but quickly closed it. It was extremely important that the world not know that I fully expected Maureen to buy us some ice cream. That for the past 120 seconds I had been selecting the flavor, that I had begun to like Maureen, and that neither of us had a penny. We supposed Maureen was being nice to Pecola because of the boys, and were embarrassed to be caught, even by each other, thinking that she would treat us, or that we deserved it as much as Pecola did. The girls came out, Pecola with 2 dips of orange pineapple, Maureen with black raspberry. "You should have got some," she said. "They had all kinds. Don't eat down to the tip of the cone," she advised Pecola. "Why?" "Because there's a fly in there." "How you know?" "Oh, not really. A girl told me she found one in the bottom of hers once, and ever since then she throws that part away." "Oh." We passed the Dreamland Theater, and Betty Grable smiled down at us. "Don't you just love her?" Maureen asked. "Uh-huh," said Pecola. I differed. Hedy Lamarr is better. Maureen agreed. "Oh, yes. My mother told me that a girl named Audrey. She went to the beauty parlor where we lived before and asked the lady to fix her hair like Hedy Lamarr's, and the lady said, 'Yeah, when you grow some hair like Hedy Lamarr's.'" She laughed long and sweet. "Sounds crazy," said Frida. "She sure is. Do you know she doesn't even menstruate yet, and she's 16? Do you yet?" "Yes." Pecola glanced at us. "So do I." Maureen made no attempt to disguise her pride. 2 months ago I started. My girlfriend in Toledo, where we lived before, said when she started she was scared to death, thought she had killed herself. "Do you know what it's for?" Pecola asked the question as though hoping to provide the answer herself. "For babies." Maureen raised 2 pencil-stroke eyebrows at the obviousness of the question. "Babies need blood when they are inside you, and if you are having a baby, then you don't menstruate. But when you're not having a baby, then you don't have to save the blood, so it comes out." "How do babies get the blood?" asked Pecola. "Through the like line. You know, where your belly button is, that is where the like line grows from and pumps the blood into the baby." "Well, if the belly buttons are to grow like lines to give the baby blood, and only girls have babies, how come boys have belly buttons?" Maureen hesitated. "I don't know," she admitted. "But boys have all sorts of things they don't need." Her tinkling laughter was somehow stronger than our nervous ones. She curled her tongue around the edge of the cone, scooping up a dollop of purple that made my eyes water. We were waiting for a stoplight to change. Maureen kept scooping the ice cream from around the cone's edge with her tongue. She didn't bite the edge as I would have done. Her tongue circled the cone. Pecola had finished hers. Maureen evidently liked her things to last.
This ends side 1 of cassette 2. Please turn the cassette over and start side 2 at the same point.
Context of White Supremacy. Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye. Man, very revealing text. Again, I hope this is book club, so not me just sitting, talking. This is supposed to be exchange of views, all offering our thoughts, observations about the book. The number to dial is 760-569-7676. The code is 564-943#. Press *6 if you have questions, comments, observations. If you're on the TalkShoe line, it's *8. One thing I will say before getting folks on the line, we were talking about the names of the characters, which is important, and some of the interviews that I heard with Toni Morrison, she was talking about names of characters. even actually her name is Chloe. That's interesting. Yeah, her real name is not Toni. Her real name is Chloe. Anywho, and she was talking about how people botched her name growing up. People couldn't or wouldn't pronounce her name correctly. Anyway, that names of characters being important. That major highlight asterisk the fact that in the book you have a character calling attention to Pecola's name and saying, hey, I think your name has something to do with imitation of light. That would be, wait a minute, highlight, asterisk, mark that 2-3 times, and, we definitely are going to have to compare, contrast, because the book is calling attention to it in and of itself, which is pretty rare. You normally wouldn't have something that explicit in a book, but that book, that play, very significant. It's older now, but it was very popular. Maybe it's still popular, but I know 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was extremely popular. They've done 2 different versions of it. I think they did a version in the 30s, and then they came back and did another version in the 50s. I'll just give a very short synopsis. You basically have, it's like The Help, right? You got a black maid working for white family, and the black female who's working for this family, the black female has a daughter. She cowbell ring. She's had an offspring with a white man, and they grow up. She stays. She works with this white family for years and years and years, and so her daughter ends up growing up with this white family, and the white family that she's working for has a young girl who's about the same age as the black female's daughter. So they grow up together, they're playing, they're friends, yada yada yada. So 10-15 years pass. Now the children are all grown up. The black female's daughter, apparently she is light complexion enough to quote unquote pass, to be accepted as white. So obviously she rejects being black and says, I'm gonna see if I can pass for being white. I don't know if I'll spoil. Yeah, I won't spoil it. You can check it out because it's well done. The film is well done. Book, whole nine. Either version of the film you want to check out, the black and white 30s version or the older or the more recent version that came out in the 50s. Anyway, I will just say, as always, white supremacy reigns supreme. I'll leave it there. I think I actually found out about imitation of life when I was doing my research on the incorrectness of sex with white people, and I was asking people about films where there's sex with a white person, and that was one of the films that was brought to my attention. Anywho, but that is extremely important, the fact that has been brought up, and the character who brings it up, Maureen Peal, wow, very significant. Anyway, I'll check to see if we have any hands, if there are any comments folks would like to share, any thoughts around the book. Again, the number to dial, 760-569-7676. And the code is 564-943 pound. If you have thoughts, comments around the book, as I said, I really would prefer to have a book club dialogue. I really thought it was constructive dialogue last Friday, different folks. I think anytime pretty much you get people that are less confused and they're having dialogue around a book that's on racism, should be pretty solid, I think. People don't really have an excuse this time around. I know for Urugu, a lot of people said that the book was pretty long, pretty intimidating, that they started late. They didn't have a copy of the book when we first started, so they weren't able to keep up with the reading pace, even though they appreciated it. Don't have that excuse this time around. All you got to do is tune in and listen. Even if you didn't listen last week, you should be able to listen and at least follow the storyline to comment what's been said so far this week. Person that's on the line, I believe this might be Bruce Fine. Your line is open, and our caller at 5407, your line is open as well.
I think I just wanted to touch on how she was going to get the Mary Jane from the store, and before she went into the store, she spoke fondly of the dandelions, and she was in the sidewalks and things like that, and she was able to see the beauty in weeds until she went into the store, and the the white guy pretty much, what they say, distaste and white eyes for her blackness, and then it changed her whole perspective. I kind of just thought of how non-white children are born, not really having a bad perspective about themselves, but then living in a white world, being whitewashed, and things like that actually changes their perspective of themselves. And, she thought that after leaving the store, the weeds were just weeds, they were ugly, and then she actually trips over the sidewalk. So I was just thinking of how non-white children are born with a good perspective of themselves, but then once they're into this white world and they start getting attacked by white people or what have you, bombarded with all this stuff in the media, then their perspective is changed of themselves. I just want to touch on that.
Excellent point. Bruce Fine, you should be there. 9325, your line is open as well.
Good evening, Gus. Good evening, everyone. I just took note of the description of Maureen being the high yellow dream child with green eyes, green, blue eyes, almost basically the same thing. And not only would a child pray for 2 years for green eyes, but being high yellow is also a dream, is also something that one would hope to come out, if you will. And I also noticed that when Toni, when she narrated the lines of Maureen, when Maureen spoke, her voice went into this calming sound, whereas it seems like Pecola is always very angry and she speaks very harsh. So I just want to point out those things. So it's like not only is she the high yellow dream child, the green eyes, but she has this calming voice, this quote unquote the total package,
I don't, you all have to forgive me. It's hard for me to keep up with the chat room stuff. I don't know if you were the one in the chat room talking about how Maureen's character seemed to be more knowledgeable than Pecola. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right, then the intellect too, just the total package, because she's light-skinned.
Even got money for ice cream. Triumph 3000, your line should be open as well, and 9325, you should be with us also.
Good evening, Gus, everybody. I'm listening. I'll make correlations. I guess I'm making more correlations between like how we live, just the mentality of black people, and like our behavior patterns modern day in comparison to the time period that this is based on. And it's like it's so interesting to me because I feel like this story is helping me see like the growth of a lot of things that we consider, I guess, black culture. Like, and you sort of begin to see the seed, even though, I mean, you know, there at this, in the 40s, our condition was already conditioned, but still just in a younger phase of, you know, recent emancipation from formal slavery. I mean, just to see the growth and like where these seeds come from and how a lot of our behavior is growing out of the seeds of complete poverty, being impoverished, being totally just having no access and being shut out, and our culture stemming from, well, what's leading me to say this is the fact that these little children, these little girls, their reaction when confronted with jealousy is violent. And like you see that, like I guess in the last show when the little white girl is eating the bread, I guess she in the car or something like that, and you know they see her and they're jealous of her position and what she has, and I mean the first thing that they say to one another is, should we beat her up? Like, and I mean the situation with Maureen where, you know, it's the jealousy that they have or what they don't have in comparison to her, and it's just, you know, they want to find some way to be destructive and tear her down and not be her friend and even be violent. I mean, they're even having fantasies about being violent towards this young girl, and I'm just thinking about our people, how, I mean, it's just so prevalent today. I mean, I hear it in our discussion. I've seen it. I mean, like this scenario unfold almost verbatim. Jealousy or something that you recognize, a position that you don't have that somebody else has, and it turns into backbiting and name calling and sometimes violence. You know, you want to go and strike this person. You want to start something with this person. You want to bump them so they say something to you. Like I've seen our people do this. Like, and just this story showing where it's coming from is just, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. Fascinating. I think that pattern is going to continue repeating as we roll along, but yeah, just what we've heard so far, that does tend to pop up pretty regularly. Being angry about something somebody else has that you don't have, the first response, let's put hands on them immediately. That's going to pop back up, I think, as we continue to roll along.
I think she even said something. She said in the little girl Pecola made the observation when she tripped on the crack in the sidewalk and she began to get angry. She was making the observation that, you know, the gratification and you know, the self-awareness that comes along with being angry. Like, she dug that. I thought that was interesting too.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Greetings, Gus.
Shooby-doo.
I'd like to thank you for introducing us to this very important novel by Toni Morrison. And one of my observations was the way that Pecola saw herself through the eyes of others as they looked upon her. When she went into the store, the 62-year-old immigrant, the store owner, as he looked through her, and whatever she saw in his eyes, disgust or however she interpreted it, it's the way that we view ourselves from the way that others see us, and then how we see the world looking through those eyes, and then the eyes looking back at us. I think that was very important. I think that that's important, that Miss Morrison was letting us see that that's one of the desires that Pecola, why she wanted the blue eyes in the first place. Not only that she thought that the blue eyes would make her look more attractive, but then she could also see the world differently through those blue eyes and not experience so much pain. That's just one point that I observed.
Gus, I have a question for the caller who spoke about jealousy, and when you were saying about our people and jealousy. I just wanted to get clarification. Like, are you saying that jealousy is something that's synonymous with black people, or it's something that's more prevalent with black people?
No, I'm definitely not saying that that's more prevalent with us. I think that we're more prone to react with violence due to jealousy. It's like petty jealousy. Like, I think that it's the root to a lot of things we experience. Just black on black violence, what we experience in the workplace, what we experience amongst ourselves, just trying to have friendships and relationships with one another. I think that jealousy and coming along with animosity, the terminology or the phrase used, crabs in the barrel, everybody pulling each other down. I think that a lot of that is rooted in our jealousy turning into something destructive on a personal level. Because I think that on a personal level, that's like the only place that we're really finding or we really feel powerful, is in the tearing down or being destructive of somebody else that looks like us. Because, I mean, theoretically, I think that psychologically, we don't think that we would be successful if we tried to tear down white people or the people with the dominant power. I think that we feel powerful when we could do it to ourselves and amongst ourselves. That's what I think is more prevalent with black people.
Did anyone else notice any anti-blackness when the characters were speaking to each other, how they would talk to each other in a degrading type manner?
Definitely.
Indeed. My family, I come from a dark-skinned family. My brother is a little darker than I am, but we're two of the darkest. And I just remember growing up, and my sister, like when she was really mad, when she was really angry at my brother, like her worst comeback, when she was upset, what she would call my brother is Blackie. Like that was her malice word. That was like her button had been pushed and she is going to attack you, and that was how she was going to tear him down, was to call him black and just be like Blackie. And I just hear so much of that in this book. It's crazy. I mean, the book overall, it makes me reflect just on my upbringing. Like, wow, I can't believe how relevant it is. 2012. Great.
I agree. That's why I think this book is phenomenal. In a way, it's kind of sad. This book is 40 years old at this point, and I think it could have been written, last week. It is certainly, unfortunately, still relevant. But, hopefully we can apply it, make changes. I did want to throw in really quick, too, the names that the children call. That's why I kind of put that in the description, that I think with children, because they're children, they don't know as much, right? They're still learning. And so they have not learned all of the socialization about what you're supposed to do publicly and trying to be, or at least pretending to be polite. Oh, the line. It's in the song we began with, Thieves in the Night, where, oh, man, Toni Morrison is just incredible, where she says, we were not compassionate, we were polite. Just one sentence, just, whoa, we were not compassionate, we were polite. Children have, generally speaking, it takes a while for them to learn how to be polite. And I think that's what makes it so profound, is that she's able to show a lot of our responses and a lot of our pathology as a result of white supremacy. When you see it in children, you just get to see it uncensored. This is what white supremacy does to us. Some of us, we're able to clean it up a little bit so we don't display it as explicitly once we get older. But I mean, when you can see it on a child level, a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old level, you just get to see those pathologies raw and out in the open. And I think that's what makes this book so powerful on a lot of levels. Yeah, I'll stop there. Minnie B, your line. Sorry, I was just going to add one more call and then we'll get you. Minnie B, your line is open.
Greetings, everyone.
Can
I be heard? Oh, hey. Something that was standing out to me was the way the prostitutes were speaking. The adult female prostitutes were speaking in front of the girl, female child, and it made me think about how the inappropriate conversations that go on in front of children, and how often that happens. That inappropriate things said to children, and how maybe one of the things that people could try to do, I know I try to do it when I'm around children, is that when children come in the room, to start to change the conversation to something that they can be involved in that's more constructive. I know as a child I heard a lot of things I really shouldn't have.
I was taking note. Oh,
go ahead.
I was going to say that reminds me that I was taking note about the complete and utter preoccupation of the adults with the blues and sorrow. It's like even one of the prostitutes was like, they stopped making boys. It's like the adults are so preoccupied, with the disposition. It's like it ain't no kids. Like it's crazy. Like how they, they don't, it's not interaction with the children. Like something engaging. They give the children orders. I think they're so preoccupied with just, the blues is what I mean, because they constantly sing about blues. So it's just like they so preoccupied with this. It's like the children are just falling through the cracks on a lot of different levels, totally dropping the ball. So the inappropriate conversations, the fact that little girl has seen her parents having sex, and not only has she seen it, it was seen like, not like you come across something like that on accident and everybody jumps to alert, like, oh, shut the door. I mean, she has opinions about it, like this is something that she's been allowed to stand there and consider. Like, wow. I mean, it's crazy.
And I liken that to today with the amount and level of sex that children are exposed to just in G-rated movies. The idea of sex that is suggested for them.
this pattern too
I'm
will
enjoying
continue.
reading along with it.
My bad. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that's I've been enjoying it, reading along with you. What were you going to say?
That pattern, I think, also will continue. The adults focusing on their sorrows as a result of racism, white supremacy, and how they manage their sadness. I think that pattern will be interesting to observe as the book continues. And it's interesting, Triumph 3000, the female caller, when she was saying that the children aren't really being paid attention to, the adults, they're more focused on the blues. I thought you were going to say they're more focused on sex. But it's interesting because that came up anyway. Relationship, they're more focused on the blues. That also will be interesting as the book continues to play out. The adults, what are they paying attention to, and how much a priority sex is. That'll come up, and how that impacts the children in the book. I think that'll come up big. But I think the adult disregard for children, I think even last week I'm remembering the conversation when they were talking about the border being introduced that stays in the house with Frida and Claudine, the McTeers. When the border's introduced, Frida, or the main child that's kind of narrating the story for us, she says that they were introduced just like furniture. Like, this is the window, this is the chair, this is the bedroom, these are the children. This is like just going down the line, like they weren't even people. The way that they were introduced to the other adults. So I think that pattern will be, our theme for the month, sex abuse, is going to come, child molestation. That's going to be front and center later. I don't know how much later, but that is going to pop up. So all of this will converge as we roll. I would just say kind of keep an eye out for that.
I wanted something else that was pretty. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I wanted to just comment. I'm thinking about the massacre that happened. And I'm sure that people are going to be provided with psychological counseling. Is going to, I'm sure, take a priority, because a traumatic event like that will probably live with some a very long time. And I think different people react differently to the same trauma, because everybody has a different temperament. Everybody is not made of the same strengths, or what have you. And I guess one of my biggest pet peeves is we will say black people are mentally ill or depressed and so on and so forth because of the terrorism of racism, white supremacy, being, as Mr. Fuller says, prisoners of war, being in your enemy's home. No one ever you don't have anyone to protect you. You don't, like on the playground with the bully. There's no big brother to come and make that bully leave you alone. And we will say, that we are suffering greatly. But then when we show the effects of that suffering, I still don't hear that understanding that we are reacting to our trauma, as Sylvia Coleman was saying, when a lot of times when children are molested, you will begin to see a pattern of obesity, of overeating. This is an effect. And I think, it's like even when someone has, I'll just throw something out there, muscular dystrophy, and they have a limp, and they walk slowly. people will be more patient with them because they understand this person walks slowly because of this disorder. But it's like when it comes to us, though we say we are suffering from mental illness, but when we see the results of it or the effects of that mental illness, the effects of 500 years of torture, we still, in my opinion, from what I hear, we still blame us. We don't blame the trauma. And as LBMO typed in the chat room, it said, I'd be careful equating misplaced anger with jealousy. There still seems to be, even though we will acknowledge that we are mentally ill, but there still seems to be this inability to empathize with what that means. And we'll look at the effect and the behavior and say, that's black people, instead of saying this is an effect of this torture. This is an effect of being a prisoner of war. And it's like I guess I get so tired of us being blamed all the time, and we have never had any healing. It's almost like we feel like we are robots. White people think we're subhuman, and sometimes I think we think we're superhuman. No effects. Get up. Keep it moving. And, I just wanted to throw that out. That these, as Gus often say, about what white people do in a system of racism, white supremacy, is to these different things are to be expected. And I think in a system continuous, 500 years and continuing, of abuse, some of these things, it should be expected. Even when a wife is abused by a husband, people say, get out of that, get out of that, get out of that place. Some people come and try and get them out. We've not been able to get out because there isn't any place to go. But that should let us know even more that this is how we're dealing with it. We're dealing with this abuse as abused people do. It isn't a black thing. We are abused. We are reacting as abused people. So I just wanted to have my little rant.
Amen. Person that I know sometimes people don't get my sense of humor, what have you, so they think I'm trying to be disparaging in a implicit manner or do it in a veiled way. I was agreeing. I thought that was great what she just said, and us not having that level of compassion for people who are suffering from ongoing, I can't even say it's post-traumatic, it's just ongoing stress reaction to white supremacy that comes out in a lot of different ways. I totally agree, and that's why I don't have any sympathy, compassion for the folks in Colorado. Any of my sympathy and compassion will be reserved for black people, victims of white supremacy. S. Dot, your line should be open.
Yes, sir. Can I be heard?
Shooby-doo.
Shooby-doo. Just following up on what the female caller had just mentioned, what I see it sort of as is like when people, let's use the analogy of smokers. People get upset with people who are addicted to nicotine and who are frequent smokers, and these people can't stop smoking. They need a nicotine patch and all these other things, and they tell them about cancer and the risk of getting cancer and all these other things, but no one seems to ever direct that anger at R.J. Reynolds and the tobacco companies. You know, no one ever seems to focus on the fact that these companies are making billions of dollars. And it's the same with racism. Mm-hmm. People will get upset, and more specifically, non-white people will get upset with one another because of our anti-blackness behaviors, but no one sits down and looks at what was the catalyst of these behaviors. Like, we'll get upset with one another about anti-sexual behavior, you know, so-called same-gender loving pairings, but we won't look at the historical record of how so many people, when they were enslaved in Africa, that part of the breaking process, when they had them in those holding pens, is that they had other Africans who would sodomize these male prisoners before they even got them on the boat, and they passed through the door of no return. And then when they got on the boat, how so many of them were subjected to being so-called cabin boys, and then when they got here, how it was even much worse for them, and how many of them were being subjected to having to function in the role of being sexual surrogates, impregnating women, and if they didn't do it, they were going to be castrated or killed, and knowing that they were powerless, and recognizing that we have been in that condition for nearly 500 years, yet and still, we still beat up on one another and pretend as if black males have a certain degree of power or black females have a certain degree of power, when we know that that's not the reality. That's just my comment.
Any other thoughts folks want to get in before we hear our second segment for the session today? Any other thoughts, anything you want people to think about or keep in mind, any other patterns sticking out to people?
I just want to... Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say that I noticed an early pattern of the black male hating and then kind of grooming these young girls when the prostitutes, what was it that they hated? All those women hated men. These women hated men, all men, without shame or apology or discrimination. And then a few pages later, when Pecola is being picked on, how the girls bond around this dislike of the boys. Those early messages there of black women, black girls, you know, doing it without black men and getting along in life without them as a part of it. Anybody else read that?
I took note of the same thing. The prostitute has said that men were inadequate and weak, and I thought it stood out that on the playground when they were teasing Pecola, it was another young black female who came to her defense against these guys.
I thought, in having read this, I read this when I was in 7th grade, which was a long time ago, that some of that early suggestion and conditioning, being exposed to some of that thinking, standing out to me.
I can relate to living a life not, I guess not being able to really identify. I mean, because it was alluded to again when, what is the girl's name, Maureen? She says that boys have a lot of things that they don't need. And that made me think about coming up where I could not identify a male's purpose. I would recognize their behavior. It was distinct behavior. But I didn't, I just can relate to what she said. Like, they have a lot of stuff that they don't need, but it was a complete lack of understanding of, like you had nothing to put males and male behavior into context. And and people, in a system of white supremacy, the male has been totally taken out of context. And I mean, we see the horrific effects. I mean, the fact that we dealing with all of these children, it's men in the household. I mean, in the one household, it's multiple men. Like, the male is there. The father figure is there. And still, it's like, it's negative. Like, I think she was explaining how her father, told them, what doors to shut. Like, what he represented is not, it's just, I don't know, it's just out of context. And I can relate to that growing up, totally. I can relate to grown women that I know right now who, I mean, just males are out of context. I mean, I think it goes for both. I think that men don't have females in their proper context either, but that whole not being able to really sufficiently provide and not being able to sufficiently protect women and children, I think that really, when thrown out of that role, I believe, I could be wrong, but I think that's a natural position of males in a healthy society. I think when that's thrown out of whack, I mean, it gets ugly.
Mm-hmm.
Way ugly. I want to pause so that we have time to actually discuss the second segment of the clip. This is about the same time length as the first one. I see you, Joe from DC. You'll be the first commenter. When we come back, I will hush, so you all will be able to take up all the time to share thoughts on the second segment. If you didn't get to share, if you had something you wanted to share on the first segment, write it down. And as soon as we come back, we'll hear Joe from DC, everybody else. This is segment 2, Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye. I'm very much enjoying the dialogue. We will be right back after the second segment, Context of White Supremacy.
While I was thinking about her ice cream, she must have been thinking about her last remark, for she said to Pecola, "Did you ever see a naked man?" Pecola blinked, then looked away. "No. Where would I see a naked man?" "I don't know. I just asked. I wouldn't even look at him. Even if I did see him, that's dirty. Who wants to see a naked man?" Pecola was agitated. Nobody's father would be naked in front of his own daughter, not unless he was dirty too. "I didn't say father. I just said naked man." "Well, how come you said father?" Maureen wanted to know. "Who else would she see, Dogtooth?" I was glad to have a chance to show anger, not only because of the ice cream, but because we had seen our own father naked and didn't care to be reminded of it and feel the shame brought on by the absence of shame. He had been walking down the hall from the bathroom into his bedroom and past the open door of our room. We had lain there wide-eyed, He stopped and looked in, trying to see in the dark room whether we were really asleep, or was it his imagination that opened eyes were looking at him. Apparently, he convinced himself that we were sleeping. He moved away, confident that his little girls would not lie open-eyed like that, staring. When he had moved on, the dark took only him away, not his nakedness. That stayed in the room with us. Friendly-like. "I'm not talking to you," said Maureen. "Besides, I don't care if she sees her father naked. She can look at him all day if she wants to. Who cares?" "You do," said Frida. "That's all you talk about." "It is not. It is so. Boys, babies, and somebody's naked daddy. You must be boy crazy." "You better be quiet. Who's going to make me?" Frida put her hand on her hip and jutted her face toward Maureen. "You already made. Mammy made. You stop talking about my mama. Well, you stop talking about my daddy. Who said anything about your old daddy? You did. Well, you started it. I wasn't even talking to you. I was talking to Pecola. Yeah, about seeing her naked daddy." "So what if she did see him?" Pecola shouted. "I never saw my daddy naked. Never." "You did, too," Maureen snapped. "Bay Boy said so." "I did not." "You did." "I did not." "Did. Your own daddy, too." Pecola tucked her head in. A funny, sad, helpless movement. A kind of hunching of the shoulders, pulling in of the neck, as though she wanted to cover her ears. "You stop talking about her daddy," I said. "What do I care about her old black daddy?" asked Maureen. "Black? Who you callin' black? You? You think you so cute." I swung at her and missed, hitting Pecola in the face. Furious at my clumsiness, I threw my notebook at her, but it caught her in the small of her velvet back, for she had turned and was flying across the street against traffic. Safe on the other side, she screamed at us, "I am cute, and you ugly. Black and ugly blackimos. I am cute." She ran down the street, the green knee socks making her legs look like wild dandelion stems that had somehow lost their heads. The weight of her remark stunned us, and it was a second or two before Frida and I collected ourselves enough to shout, "Six-fingered dog-tooth meringue pie!" We chanted this most powerful of our arsenal of insults as long as we could see the green stems and rabbit fur. Grown people frowned at the three girls on the curbside, two with their coats draped over their heads, the collars framing the eyebrows like nuns' habits, black garters showing where they bit the tops of brown stockings that barely covered the knees. Angry faces nodded like dark cauliflowers. Pecola stood a little apart from us, her eyes hinged in the direction in which Maureen had fled. She seemed to fold into herself, like a pleated wing. Her pain antagonized me. I wanted to open her up, crisp her edges, ram a stick down that hunched and curving spine, force her to stand erect, and spit the misery out on the streets. But she held it in where it could lap up into her eyes. Frida snatched her coat from her head. "Come on, Claudia. Bye, Pecola." We walked quickly at first, and then slower, pausing every now and then to fasten garters, tie shoelaces, scratch, or examine old scars. We were sinking under the wisdom, accuracy, and relevance of Maureen's last words. If she was cute, and if anything could be believed, she was, then we were not. And what did that mean? We were lesser, nicer, brighter, but still lesser. Dolls we could destroy, but we couldn't destroy the honey voices of parents and aunts, the obedience in the eyes of our peers, the slippery light in the eyes of our teachers when they encountered the Maureen Peals of the world. What was the secret? What did we lack? Why was it important? And so what? Guileless and without vanity, we were still in love with ourselves then, We felt comfortable in our skins, enjoyed the news that our senses released to us, admired our dirt, cultivated our scars, and could not comprehend this unworthiness. Jealousy we understood and thought natural, a desire to have what somebody else had, but envy was a strange new feeling for us. And all the time we knew that Maureen Peal was not the enemy and not worthy of such intense hatred. The thing to fear was the thing that made her beautiful and not us. The house was quiet when we opened the door. The acrid smell of simmering turnips filled our cheeks with sour saliva. "Mama?" There was no answer, but a sound of feet. Mr. Henry shuffled part of the way down the stairs. One thick, hairless leg leaned out of his bathrobe. "Hello there, Greta Garbo. Hello, Ginger Rogers." We gave him the giggle he was accustomed to. "Hello, Mr. Henry, where's Mama?" "She went to your grandma's. Left word for you to cut off the turnips and eat some graham crackers till she got back. They in the kitchen." We sat in silence at the kitchen table, crumbling the crackers into anthills. In a little while, Mr. Henry came back down the stairs. Now he had his trousers on under his robe. "Say, wouldn't you all like some cream?" "Oh, yes, sir." Here's a quarter. Go on over to Isley's and get yourself some cream. You been good girls, ain't you?" His light green words restored color to the day. "Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Henry. Will you tell Mama for us if she comes?" "Sure, but she ain't due back for a spell." Coatless, we left the house and had gotten all the way to the corner when Frida said, "I don't want to go to Isley's." "What?" "I don't want ice cream. I want potato chips." "They got potato chips at Isley's." "I know. But why go all that long way? Miss Bertha got potato chips." "But I want ice cream." "No, you don't, Claudia." "I do, too." "Well, you go on to Isley's. I'm going to Miss Bertha's." "But you got the quarter, and I don't want to go all the way up there by myself." "Then let's go to Miss Bertha's. You like her candy, don't you?" "It's always stale, and she always runs out of stuff. Today is Friday. She orders fresh on Friday. And then that crazy old soaphead Church lives there." "So what?" "We're together. We'll run if he does anything at us." "He scares me." "Well, I don't want to go up by Isley's. Suppose meringue pie is hanging around. You want to run into her, Claudia?" "Come on, Frida. I'll get candy." Miss Bertha had a small candy, snuff, and tobacco store. One brick room sitting in her front yard. You had to peep in the door, and if she wasn't there, you knocked on the door of her house and back. This day she was sitting behind the counter, reading a Bible in a tube of sunlight. Frida bought potato chips, and we got 3 Powerhouse bars for 10 cents and had a dime left. We hurried back home to sit under the lilac bushes on the side of the house. We always did our candy dance there so Rosemary could see us and get jealous. The candy dance was a humming, skipping, foot-tapping, eating, smacking combination that overtook us when we had sweets. Creeping between the bushes in the side of the house, we heard voices and laughter. We looked into the living room window, expecting to see Mama. Instead, we saw Mr. Henry and 2 women. In a playful manner, the way grandmothers do with babies, he was sucking the fingers of one of the women, whose laughter filled a tiny place over his head. The other woman was buttoning her coat. We knew immediately who they were, and our flesh crawled. One was China, and the other was called the Maginot Line. The back of my neck itched. These were the fancy women of the maroon nail polish that Mama and Big Mama hated, and in our house. China was not too terrible, at least not in our imaginations. She was thin, aging, absent-minded, and unaggressive. But the Maginot Line, that was the one my mother said she wouldn't let eat out of one of her plates. That was the one church women never allowed their eyes to rest on. That was the one who had killed people, set them on fire, poisoned them, cooked them in lye. Although I thought the Maginot Line's face, hidden under all that fat, was really sweet, I had heard too many black and red words about her, seen too many mouths go triangle at the mention of her name, to dwell on any redeeming feature she might have. Showing brown teeth, China seemed to be genuinely enjoying Mr. Henry. The sight of him licking her fingers brought to mind the girly magazines in his room. A cold wind blew somewhere in me, lifting little leaves of terror and obscure longing. I thought I saw a mild lonesomeness cross the face of the Maginot Line, but it may have been my own image that I saw in the slow flaring of her nostrils, in her eyes that reminded me of waterfalls in movies about Hawaii. The Maginot Line yawned and said, "Come on, China. We can't hang in here all day. Then people be home soon." She moved toward the door. Frida and I dropped down to the ground, looking wildly into each other's eyes. When the women were some distance away, we went inside. Mr. Henry was in the kitchen, opening a bottle of pop. "Back already?" "Yes, sir." "Cream all gone?" His little teeth looked so kindly and helpless. Was that really our Mr. Henry with China's fingers? "We got candy instead." "You did, huh? Old sugar-toothed Greta Garbo." He wiped the bottle sweat and turned it up to his lips, a gesture that made me uncomfortable. "Who were those women, Mr. Henry?" He choked on the pop and looked at Frida. "What you say?" "Those women," she repeated. "Who just left? Who were they?" "Oh!" He laughed the grown-up, getting ready to lie laugh. The hee-hee we knew well. "Those are some members of my Bible class. We read the scriptures together, and so they came today to read with me." "Oh," said Frida. I was looking at his house slippers to keep from seeing those kindly teeth frame a lie. He walked toward the stairs and then turned back to us. "Better not mention it to your mother. She don't take to so much Bible study and don't like me having visitors, even if they're good Christians." "No, sir, Mr. Henry, we won't." He rapidly mounted the stairs. "Should we?" I asked. "Tell Mama?" Frida sighed. She had not even opened her powerhouse bar or her potato chips, and now she traced the letters on the candy wrappers with her fingers. Suddenly she lifted her head and began to look all around the kitchen. "No, I guess not. No plates are out." "Plates? What you talking about now?" "No plates are out. The Maginot Line didn't eat out of one of Mama's plates. Besides, Mama would just fuss all day if we told her." We sat down and looked at the graham cracker anthills we had made. "We better cut off the turnips. They'll burn, and Mama will whip us," she said. "I know. But if we let them burn, we won't have to eat them." Hey, what a lovely idea, I thought. "Which you want, a whipping and no turnips, or turnips and no whippings?" "I don't know. Maybe we could burn them just a little, so Mama and Daddy can eat them, but we can say we can't." "Okay." I made a volcano out of my anthill. "Frida?" "What?" "What did Woodrow do that you was going to tell?" "Wet the bed. Mrs. Kane told Mama he won't quit." "Oh, nasty." The sky was getting dark. I looked out of the window and saw snow falling. I poked my finger down into the mouth of my volcano, and it toppled, dispersing the golden grains into little swirls. The turnip pot crackled. See the cat. It goes meow, meow. Come and play. Come play with Jane. The kitten will not play, play, play. They came from Mobile, Aiken, from Newport News, from Marietta, from Meridian. And the sound of these places in their mouths make you think of love. When you ask them where they are from, they tilt their heads and say, Mobile, and you think you've been kissed. They say Aiken, and you see a white butterfly glance off a fence with a torn wing. They say Nacogdoches, and you want to say, yes, I will. You don't know what these towns are like, but you love what happens to the air when they open their lips and let the names ease out. Meridian. The sound of it opens the windows of a room like the first 4 notes of a hymn. Few people can say the names of their hometowns with such sly affection. Perhaps because they don't have hometowns, just places where they were born. But these girls soak up the juice of their hometowns, and it never leaves them. They are thin brown girls who have looked long at hollyhocks in the backyards of Meridian, Mobile, Aiken, and Baton Rouge. And like hollyhocks, they are narrow, tall, and still. Their roots are deep, their stalks are firm, and only the top blossom nods in the wind. They have the eyes of people who can tell what time it is by the color of the sky. Such girls live in quiet black neighborhoods where everybody is gainfully employed, where there are porch swings hanging from chains, where the grass is cut with a scythe, where rooster combs and sunflowers grow in the yards, and pots of bleeding heart, ivy, and mother-in-law tongue line the steps and windowsills. Such girls have bought watermelon and snap beans from the fruit man's wagon. They have put in the window the cardboard sign that has a pound measure printed on each of 3 edges. 10 pounds, 25 pounds, 50 pounds, and no ice on the 4th. These particular brown girls from Mobile and Aiken are not like some of their sisters. They are not fretful, nervous, or shrill. They do not have lovely black necks that stretch as though against an invisible collar. Their eyes do not bite. These sugar-brown Mobile girls move through the streets without a stir. They are as sweet and plain as butter cake. Slim ankles, long, narrow feet. They wash themselves with orange-colored Lifebuoy soap, dust themselves with cashmere bouquet talc, clean their teeth with salt on a piece of rag, soften their skin with Jergens lotion. They smell like wood, newspapers, and vanilla. They straighten their hair with Dixie Peach and part it on the side. At night, they curl it in paper from brown bags, tie a print scarf around their heads, and sleep with hands folded across their stomachs. They do not drink, smoke, or swear, and they still call sex nookie. They sing second soprano in the choir, and although their voices are clear and steady, they are never picked to solo. They are in the second row, white blouses starched, blue skirts almost purple from ironing. They go to land-grant colleges, normal schools, and learn how to do the white man's work with refinement, home economics to prepare his food, teacher education to instruct black children in obedience, music to soothe the weary master and entertain his blunted soul. Here they learn the rest of the lesson begun in those soft houses with porch swings and pots of bleeding heart, how to behave. The careful development of thrift, patience, high morals, and good manners. In short, how to get rid of the funkiness. The dreadful funkiness of passion, the funkiness of nature, the funkiness of the wide range of human emotions. Wherever it erupts, this funk, they wipe it away. Where it crusts, they dissolve it. Where it drips, flowers, or clings, they find it and fight it until it dies. They fight this battle all the way to the grave. The laugh that is a little too loud, the enunciation a little too round, the gesture a little too generous. They hold their behinds in for fear of a sway too free. When they wear lipstick, They never cover the entire mouth for fear of lips too thick, and they worry about the edges of their hair. They never seem to have boyfriends, but they always marry. Certain men watch them without seeming to, and know that if such a girl is in his house, he will sleep on sheets boiled white, hung out to dry on juniper bushes, and pressed flat with a heavy iron. There will be pretty paper flowers decorating the picture of his mother, a large Bible in the front room. They feel secure. They know their work clothes will be mended, washed, and ironed on Monday, and that their Sunday shirts will billow on hangers from the door jamb, stiffly starched and white. They look at her hands and know what she will do with biscuit dough. They smell the coffee and the fried ham, see the white, smoky grits with a dollop of butter on top. Her hips assure them that she will bear children easily and painlessly. And they are right. What they do not know is that this plain brown girl will build her nest stick by stick, make it her own inviolable and stand guard over its every plant, weed, and doily, even against him. In silence will she return the lamp to where she put it in the first place, remove the dishes from the table as soon as the last bite is taken, wipe the doorknob after a greasy hand has touched it. A sidelong look will be enough to tell him to smoke on the back porch. Children will sense instantly that they cannot come into her yard to retrieve a ball. But the men do not know these things. Nor do they know that she will give him her body sparingly and partially. He must enter her surreptitiously, lifting the hem of her nightgown only to her navel. He must rest his weight on his elbows when they make love, ostensibly to avoid hurting her breasts, but actually to keep her from having to touch or feel too much of him. While he moves inside her, she will wonder why they didn't put the necessary but private parts of the body in some more convenient place, like the armpit, for example, or the palm of the hand, some place one could get to easily and quickly without undressing. She stiffens when she feels one of her paper curlers coming undone from the activity of love, imprints in her mind which one it is that is coming loose so she can quickly secure it once he is through. She hopes he will not sweat. The damp may get into her hair, and that she will remain dry between her legs. She hates the glucking sound they make when she is moist. When she senses some spasm about to grip him, she will make rapid movements with her hips, press her fingernails into his back, suck in her breath, and pretend she is having an orgasm. She might wonder again, for the 600th time, what it would be like to have that feeling while her husband's penis is inside her. The closest thing to it was the time she was walking down the street, and her napkin slipped free of her sanitary belt. It moved gently between her legs as she walked, gently, ever so gently. And then a slight and distinctly delicious sensation collected in her crotch. As the delight grew, she had to stop in the street, hold her thighs together to contain it. That must be what it is like, she thinks. But it never happens when he is inside her. When he withdraws, she pulls her nightgown down, slips out of the bed, and into the bathroom with relief. Occasionally, some living thing will engage her affections. A cat, perhaps, who will love her order, precision, and constancy, who will be as clean and quiet as she is. The cat will settle quietly on the windowsill and caress her with his eyes. She can hold him in her arms, letting his back paws struggle for footing on her breast, and his forepaws cling to her shoulder. She can rub the smooth fur and feel the unresisting flesh underneath. At her gentlest touch, he will preen, stretch, and open his mouth, and she will accept the strangely pleasant sensation that comes when he rides beneath her hand and flattens his eyes with a surfeit of sensual delight. When she stands cooking at the table, he will circle about her shanks, and the trill of his fur spirals up her legs to her thighs to make her fingers tremble a little in the pie dough. Or, as she sits reading the uplifting thoughts in the Liberty magazine, the cat will jump into her lap. She will fondle the soft hill of hair and let the warmth of the animal's body seep over and into the deeply private areas of her lap. Sometimes the magazine drops, and she opens her legs just a little, and the two of them will be still together, perhaps shifting a little together, sleeping a little together, until 4 o'clock, when the intruder comes home from work, vaguely anxious about what's for dinner. The cat will always know that he is first in her affections, even after she bears a child, for she does bear a child, easily and painlessly, but only one, a son named Junior. One such girl from Mobile, or Meridian, or Aiken, who did not sweat in her armpits nor between her thighs, who smelled of wood and vanilla, who had made soufflés in the home economics department, moved with her husband, Louis, to Lorain, Ohio. Her name was Geraldine. There she built her nest, ironed shirts, potted bleeding hearts, played with her cat, and birthed Louis Jr. Geraldine did not allow her baby Junior to cry. As long as his needs were physical, she could meet them. Comfort and satiety. He was always brushed, bathed, oiled, and shod. Geraldine didn't talk to him, coo to him, or indulge him in kissing bouts, but she saw that every other desire was fulfilled. It was not long before the child discovered the difference in his mother's behavior to himself and the cat. As he grew older, he learned how to direct his hatred of his mother to the cat, and spent some happy moments watching it suffer. The cat survived because Geraldine was seldom away from home, and could effectively soothe the animal when Junior abused him. Geraldine, Louis, Jr., and the cat lived next to the playground of Washington Irving School. Junior considered the playground his own, and the school children coveted his freedom to sleep late, go home for lunch, and dominate the playground after school. He hated to see the swings, slides, monkey bars, and seesaws empty, and tried to get kids to stick around as long as possible. White kids. His mother did not like him to play with niggers. She had explained to him the difference between colored people and niggers. They were easily identifiable. Colored people were neat and quiet. Niggers were dirty and loud. He belonged to the former group. He wore white shirts and blue trousers. His hair was cut as close to his scalp as possible to avoid any suggestion of wool. The part was etched into his hair by the barber. In winter, his mother put Jergens lotion on his face to keep the skin from becoming ashen. Even though he was light-skinned, it was possible to ash. The line between colored and nigger was not always clear. Subtle and telltale signs threatened to erode it, and the watch had to be constant. Junior used to long to play with the black boys. More than anything in the world, he wanted to play king of the mountain, and have them push him down the mound of dirt and roll over him. He wanted to feel their hardness pressing on him, smell their wild blackness, and say, "Fuck you," with that lovely casualness. He wanted to sit with them on curbstones and compare the sharpness of jackknives, the distance and arcs of spitting. In the toilet, he wanted to share with them the laurels of being able to pee far and long. Bayboy and P.L. had at one time been his idols. Gradually, he came to agree with his mother that neither Bayboy nor P.L. was good enough for him. He played only with Ralph Nasinski, who was 2 years younger, wore glasses, and didn't want to do anything. More and more, Junior enjoyed bullying girls. It was easy making them scream and run. How he laughed when they fell down and their bloomers showed. When they got up, their faces red and crinkled, it made him feel good. The nigger girls he didn't pick on very much. They usually traveled in packs, and once when he threw a stone at some of them, they chased, caught, and beat him witless. He lied to his mother, saying Bayboy did it. His mother was very upset. His father just kept on reading the Lorraine Journal. When the mood struck him, he would call a child passing by to come play on the swings or the seesaw. If the child wouldn't, or did, and left too soon, Junior threw gravel at him. He became a very good shot. Alternately bored and frightened at home, the playground was his joy. On a day when he had been especially idle, he saw a very black girl taking a shortcut through the playground. She kept her head down as she walked. He had seen her many times before, standing alone, always alone, at recess. Nobody ever played with her, probably, he thought, because she was ugly. Now Junior called to her, "Hey, what are you doing walking through my yard?" The girl stopped. "Nobody can come through this yard less than I say so." "This ain't your yard, it's the school's." "But I'm in charge of it." The girl started to walk away. "Wait!" Junior walked toward her. "You can play in it if you want to. What's your name?" "Pecola. I don't want to play." "Come on. I'm not going to bother you." "I got to go home." "Say, you want to see something? I got something to show you." "No. What is it?" "Come on in my house. See, I live right there. Come on. I'll show you." "Show me what?" "Some kittens. We got some kittens. You can have one if you want." "Real kittens?" "Yeah. Come on." He pulled gently at her dress. Pecola began to move toward his house. When he knew she had agreed, Junior ran ahead excitedly, stopping only to yell back at her to come on. He held the door open for her, smiling his encouragement. Pecola climbed the porch stairs and hesitated there, afraid to follow him. The house looked dark. Junior said, "There's nobody here. My mom's gone out, and my father's at work. Don't you want to see the kittens?" Junior turned on the lights. Pecola stepped inside the door. How beautiful, she thought. What a beautiful house. There was a big red and gold Bible on the dining room table. Little lace doilies were everywhere, on arms and backs of chairs, in the center of a large dining table, on little tables. Potted plants were on all the windowsills. A color picture of Jesus Christ hung on a wall with the prettiest paper flowers fastened on the frame. She wanted to see everything slowly, slowly. But Junior kept saying, "Hey, you, come on, come on." He pulled her into another room, even more beautiful than the first. More doilies. A big lamp with green and gold base and white shade. There was even a rug on the floor with enormous dark red flowers. She was deep in admiration of the flowers when Junior said, "Here." Pecola turned. "Here's your kitten," he screeched, and he threw a big black cat right in her face. She sucked in her breath in fear and surprise and felt fur in her mouth. The cat clawed her face and chest in an effort to right itself, then leapt nimbly to the floor. Junior was laughing and running around the room, clutching his stomach delightedly. Pecola touched the scratched place on her face and felt tears coming. When she started toward the doorway, Junior leapt in front of her. "You can't get out. You're my prisoner," he said. His eyes were merry but hard. "You let me go." "No." He pushed her down, ran out the door that separated the rooms, and held it shut with his hands. Pecola's banging on the door increased his gasping, high-pitched laughter. The tears came fast, and she held her face in her hands. When something soft and furry moved around her ankles, she jumped and saw it was the cat. He wound himself in and about her legs. Momentarily distracted from her fear, she squatted down to touch him, her hands wet from the tears. The cat rubbed up against her knee. He was black all over, deep silky black, and his eyes, pointing down toward his nose, were bluish-green. The light made them shine like blue ice. Pecola rubbed the cat's head. He whined, his tongue flicking with pleasure. The blue eyes in the black face held her. Junior, curious at not hearing her sobs, opened the door and saw her squatting down, rubbing the cat's back. He saw the cat stretching its head and flattening its eyes. He had seen that expression many times as the animal responded to his mother's touch. "Give me my cat." His voice broke. With a movement both awkward and sure, he snatched the cat by one of its hind legs and began to swing it around his head in a circle. "Stop that!" Pecola was screaming. The cat's free paws were stiffened, ready to grab anything to restore balance, its mouth wide, its eyes blue streaks of horror. Still screaming, Pecola reached for Junior's hand. She heard her dress rip under her arm. Junior tried to push her away, but she grabbed the arm which was swinging the cat. They both fell, and in falling, Junior let go the cat, which, having been released in mid-motion, was thrown full force against the window. It slithered down and fell on the radiator behind the sofa. Except for a few shudders, it was still. There was only the slightest smell of singed fur. Geraldine opened the door. "What is this?" Her voice was mild, as though asking a perfectly reasonable question. "Who is this girl?" "She killed our cat," Junior said. "Look." He pointed to the radiator, where the cat lay, its blue eyes closed, leaving only an empty, black, and helpless face. Geraldine went to the radiator and picked up the cat. He was limp in her arms, but she rubbed her face in his fur. She looked at Pecola, saw the dirty, torn dress, the plaits sticking out on her head, hair matted where the plaits had come undone, the muddy shoes, with the wad of gum peeping out from between the cheap soles, the soiled socks, one of which had been walked down into the heel of the shoe. She saw the safety pin holding the hem of the dress up. Up over the hump of the cat's back, she looked at her. She had seen this little girl all her life, hanging out of windows over saloons in Mobile, crawling over the porches of shotgun houses on the edge of town, sitting in bus stations, holding paper bags and crying to mothers who kept saying, "Shut up." Hair uncombed, dresses falling apart, shoes untied and caked with dirt. They had stared at her with great uncomprehending eyes that questioned nothing and asked everything. Unblinking and unabashed, they stared up at her. The end of the world lay in their eyes, and the beginning, and all the waste in between. They were everywhere. They slept six in a bed, all their pee mixing together in the night as they wet their beds, each in his own candy and potato chip dream. In the long, hot days, they idled away, picking plaster from the walls and digging into the earth with sticks. They sat in little rows on street curbs, crowded into pews at church, taking space from the nice, neat, colored children. They clowned on the playgrounds, broke things in dime stores, ran in front of you on the street, made ice slides in the sloped sidewalks in winter. The girls grew up knowing nothing of girdles, and the boys announced their manhood by turning the bills of their caps backward. Grass wouldn't grow where they lived, flowers died, shades fell down, tin cans and tires blossomed where they lived. They lived on cold black-eyed peas and orange pop. Like flies, they hovered. Like flies, they settled, and this one had settled in her house. Up over the hump of the cat's back, she looked. "Get out," she said, her voice quiet. "You nasty little black bitch, get out of my house." The cat shuddered and flicked his tail. Pecola backed out of the room, staring at the pretty milk-brown lady in the pretty golden-green house who was talking to her through the cat's fur. The pretty lady's words made the cat fur move. The breath of each word parted the fur. Pecola turned to find the front door and saw Jesus looking down at her with sad and unsurprised eyes, his long brown hair parted in the middle, the gay paper flowers twisted around his face. Outside, the March wind blew into the rip in her dress. She held her head down against the cold, but She could not hold it low enough to avoid seeing the snowflakes falling and dying on the pavement.
This ends side 2 of cassette 2 of The Bluest Eye. Please fast forward to the end before loading cassette 3.
What to say? Context of White Supremacy. I will get to the lines of the folks who dialed in. If you have questions or comments, you should dial in now. We have about 30 minutes left. Let's see. Bruce Fun, Triumph 3000, S. Minnie B, your lines are all open. Anybody else, if you want to call in, the number to dial is 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943#. All I can say is, man, if I had known there was material like this to read that did call attention, explain some of the things that I was experiencing as a victim of racism, I would have been a much more avid reader at a younger age. And I'll just mute my line there. Triumph 3000, Bruce Fine, S. Minnie B. Did y'all have any thoughts, comments, or?
I'm still letting it digest.
Oh, I feel you. I feel you.
Yeah, I was trying to take some time to write down some thoughts, but I think that that climax of that, how that just went off, that scene, I mean, I just feel it's multidimensional. I think that, I don't know if she did that on purpose, but it's almost like this little boy, to me, like, he becomes the white supremacist. Like, or he becomes the personification of white supremacy almost. Like, it starts out and he's explaining how the black girls, he wouldn't pick on them when they were in packs. They usually traveled in packs, and you know, he found this one individual girl. I thought it was interesting how he said that the black girls would fight. They would fight back, you know, they would throw something, so he would typically leave them alone. But like a predator that finds prey, you know, he finds her coming through the playground by herself, and then he becomes, you know, the predator that he is. And he uses friendliness and friendship to suck her in, ultimately to take her back somewhere and have impunity as he abuses her. Like, I thought that, I mean, I don't know if she was doing that purposefully, but that whole scenario that unfolds with this little boy is like, I mean, that's what the terrorists, our racist enemies, white supremacists, it's like that's what they do. That's how they operate. They isolate us. They make sure that we're not, you know, traveling in packs. They make sure that we are separate. We're individual. And they use friendship and flattery and nice words and nice things and money to lure you into a trap, so that with impunity they can put you into a position to abuse you. And he even says, like, you're not going anywhere. You are my prisoner. Like, it was just, that's a crazy scene.
What stood out to me was the female characters and their one-dimensional concept of beauty. When they said if she was cute, we were lesser, and the thing to fear was the thing that made her beautiful and not us. That stood out to me, and it reminded me of my sisters growing up, how they my sisters are all three different shades. One is lighter, one is brown, and one is darker. And it was interesting how the three of them would fight over that one-dimensional standard of what was attractive as black girls. I think that at different points in their lives, each of them became what the standard of what would be attractive if you were a black female was. You know, like the younger one, it was cool when light skin was in. Then it was a point where brown skin was in, and then there was a point where dark skin was in. So that was pretty interesting to me.
I keep recalling, you know, this level of abuse that this little girl from her birth is just getting heaped upon her on so many levels. Mm-hmm. And then and how each chapter Toni is showing us just one more area of abuse that she has to survive to get through, and in each chapter some reference to how black she is, or how ugly she is, or how just unattractive she is. It makes me recall how I felt when I sat watching the movie Precious.
Yeah, it also reminded me of a lyric from a song of Biggie Smalls where he says, "Heartthrob never, black and ugly is forever." And I would hear so many black people quote that line over and over, "Heartthrob never, black and ugly forever." And it was like he personified a celebration of the so-called unattractive black person that so many black people tended to root for, because he was pretty much considered the underdog. And when I was listening to this, it reminded me of that, how so many black people grow up where the first remark that they reach for is something that has to do with a person's color, you know, nappy head, bubble lips, you know, something like that. And so that reminded me a lot of the things that I heard when I was growing up. Nappy head, bubble lips, things like that.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Hey, Gus. Hey, guys. What's really striking me here, particularly as a parent, you know, I'm just really struck by the cycles of the pathology that's going on. And I do agree with the other sister in the call in terms of how these insults that have just been heaped on Pecola from the start. And I think that when they said that they didn't have a hometown, just places where they were born, and it's like she never, I don't want to go ahead, you know, knowing what eventually is going to happen, but it's she never had anything of her own, any identity, any positive identity of her own, and it's just I'm sorry, my thoughts are all over the place because I'm really feeling for this child, and I think that we just have to be really careful. These children are seeing things they shouldn't be seeing and hearing things that they shouldn't be hearing, so they're hardly even getting a chance to be children, you know, to be young people. But this whole thing of with this ugliness of Pecola, the nasty little black bitch, and we hear that a lot. It's like whatever you are, whatever insult someone wants to heap on you, if they can, add that black to it, that's like an extra sting. And I'm saying we have to look at the child that's receiving this and understand how, at 5, at 10, at 15, if this is being heaped on this child, at 25, 30, 35, it's not going to just go away.
Yes. Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Pecola I was just sitting here and saying, she reminds me of the stories that my mother tells me about her childhood. And just, what's today? Friday? I think it was Wednesday. She was saying to me, as she said many times, and she's in her 60s and it still bothers her. She says every time she was sexually abused or she was abused, she said, I was the one who was always sent away. I was the one who was looked at as the troublemaker. She said none of the men or the boys were dealt with. I was the one whom everybody called names. I was the one, the adult women would sit around and say, she's fast, she's black. And she just said she was passed from home to home to home. And just abused, and it still bothers her. And just listening to her, Toni speak of Pecola, my mind went to my mother in her childhood.
And it was interesting that even though the cat had the blue eyes, the fact that the cat was otherwise all black, and Junior killed the cat. So even the blue eyes didn't save the black cat.
Mm-hmm.
0242, you're with us as well.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
This is my first time calling in, but I was reminded of race buffering, the term in Mr. Fuller's compensatory word guide, particularly as regards to the conflict between the shades of blackness, the characters in this book.
One thing that stood out to me, and the other callers touched on it briefly, was it made me harken back to my childhood and remember how verbally abusive my family members could be towards one another when they would be playing the so-called dozens and getting around one another and saying the most hurtful things that you could imagine. And people would laugh and joke, you had big head, bubble lips, whatever. But the moment someone tied black into it, you black ugly, then it was time to fight. And it always turned immediately to time to fight when a black comment was added to anything. Or if someone, we would call it ranking on one another, and if someone was ranking you out too bad and you couldn't take it anymore, you went for the black belt. You black this, you black that. And, just growing up with that. And it made me also think about how some of my aunts, they were really, really verbally abusive. I can't imagine how my cousins' self-esteems are today, but their mothers would be like, you black filthy bitch, you black no good bitch, you black fast bitch, and all of those terms, they would say that to them as kids. And I just can't imagine what they're like today emotionally from hearing that growing up.
And it would be interesting to know what their parents heard about themselves growing up.
Oh, my grandmother, my mother's mother, she heard some of the worst things that a person could imagine. And they just grew up in the South, and they were just so used to being verbally abusive to each other because they said they had to toughen each other up at home because they'd go out in the world and white people would say the worst things to them imaginable. So they kind of, I guess, considered it practice. So they just grew up being verbally abusive to one another because that was the way that their parents were.
Mm-hmm.
But with me, I realized, how verbally abusive and destructive it was in relationships. Because, I date people and they go, well, why are you so sarcastic? And you know how to say some really hurtful things. So I became mindful of the words that I use and how I express myself to people. And when I get around my family members, now that I'm more conscientious of the words that I use, I realize how far I've come and how much far I still have to go. When I listen to some of my family members, they speak to their children extremely harshly.
Mm-hmm.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
The pattern of abuse, it does seem to go from generation to generation to generation, and I think about like children who you may have 3 kids who grow up in an abusive home, like a physically abusive home, and it seems like all 3 of those kids will take something different from that experience and how they raise their children. Some will say, I'll never discipline my children, not even with a spanking. One may say that. One may say, I'll never have children. And then that third one will do the exact same thing that was done to them. So it's amazing, like I was saying earlier, the temperament. Everybody is not made the same, have a different temperament, and growing up in the same household, experiencing the same abuse, and respond to it differently. And that's why, generation to generation, you have that pattern continue to go on and on and on, and then you may have one of the children who say, I'll never talk to my kids like that. It's just amazing that I call that people behavior, that mechanism of our psyche and how we respond to abuse.
Got about 10 minutes left in the program. Anything you all want to get out? I did want to throw out the section where they're talking about Junior, his mom, where she gives her the explanation of the line between niggers and colors.
Colored people.
And I thought it was interesting because I think that came after it talked about how these women from Alabama, they would go around and they would fight against the funk. And I was saying that I think funk is being equated with black. And it was playing out the same way. Like she was doing all this. You watched being concerned about the edge of your hair. I mean, that would be enough for me right there, just to equate funk with black. But it seemed exactly the same, that boundary line, that you got to make sure that, you're not doing things to be considered too funk. The way you walk, she said she tucked her behind in. She didn't want to be too loose in her walk with her hips. Yeah, I just want to make sure I got that in. But yeah, any other thoughts, comments? That even reminded me of the male caller. Fritz said his first time calling in about the race buffering. I'll mute my line.
When Junior,
that's about. I was going to just say real quick along that lines of how Toni really kind of describes this this graduation from the funk to this illusion of middle class with these women, with Geraldine, and who she is, where she is, how she carries herself, how she takes care of her man and her child, and buying into that there's a class distinction. Not just a color distinction, but a class distinction was made at that juncture also.
right, and again, the whole equating of good characteristics with the lighter and bad characteristics with the darker. Because I thought that was interesting when she said that the I guess the nigger children was taking space from the nice colored children in church. And I was also when Junior felt so free to lie and say that Pecola had killed the cat, and I was just thinking about all the times when these white females have killed their children and said a black guy did it, knowing that she would at least be initially believed. He didn't seem to feel any hesitation that when he said she did it, that he would be believed.
I also thought about when they said that colored folks or coloreds were neat and quiet, and niggers were dirty and loud.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me think so much about growing up, how so many people around me would always warn me about acting like a nigger. Like acting like a nigger was the worst thing that you could possibly do. Stop acting like a nigger, or you're a no good nigger, or stupid nigger, or a dumb nigger, and so it was so ingrained in me that to today, I don't use the term to identify myself as that. And if someone uses it to me, it just makes me really angry. And, and I know that today people use it and say that it's a matter of the context and usage and the things of that nature. But that's still a sore spot for me today. And I guess that stems from me growing up and my family members putting that distinction to me as well.
Well, Chris Rock made a very popular joke out of how much he loves black people, but he hates niggas. Anybody else heard that? That joke?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard a number of civilians, people walking around repeating that.
Yes.
In conversation as though it's acceptable. To say, I love black people, but I can't stand niggers, and they go on to, and these are black people who are saying these things, and it's that distinction, and that Toni Morrison has written about this and making this distinction. I think it's religious based also. That's where black community in the United States that became sort of the illusion of middle class was through the church. There's a lot of segregation within the black church. In my experience.
I also, what else stood out to me was the scene where where she was describing the plain brown women, so to speak, and how she would interact with her male partner, how it just made the whole act of intimacy not intimate at all, and very detached. She seemed very removed from it. It seemed like it was no enjoyment whatsoever. So I thought that was a pretty interesting narrative.
Yeah, I think that each individual person was so damaged that, you know, coming together to try to form whatever relationship, male, female, you know, parent, child, none of those relationships could be healthy because each individual was so unhealthy.
And that goes back to that. Everything about their existence, or her existence, was the getting rid of the funkiness, the dreadful funkiness of passion, the funkiness of nature, the funkiness of the wide range of human emotion.
Yeah, it was interesting that Morrison. One of the things that she was thinking about when, you know, when the husband was entering her was the fact that her the tissue on her roller was she was hoping the tissue on her roller wouldn't come off.
Yeah, to F. Scott's point, I have written it down from part one, and I have forgotten to mention it. Toni said that Pecola didn't know what love looked like, and when she heard her father with her mother, she concluded that love was a choking sound and silence. I thought that was very interesting as well.
Yeah. I mean, and it was interesting also that she mentioned that the woman would put the cat between her legs and seemed to derive some sort of sexual pleasure from that. That seemed pretty strange to me as well.
I think it's.
Go ahead, sir.
I think that correlation, how that family or those people struck me. I think it's interesting how, to me, the little boy sort of personified white supremacy for me, but his mom is like the characteristics that she's pointing out, like she's personifying white people as well, but it's like the negative attributes of white people, like, you know, sucking in your ass, and I mean you're behind, and you know, being quiet, and that soft mannered, and the distinction that she's making between herself and so-called nigger behavior. It makes me think about white people, like their music, their shows, like the difference between going to or looking at African culture and how we express ourselves through music and dance and color, and then the correlation, the comparison of going to one of their operas, or, you know, something that they consider high and mighty or elite, but it's all about being quiet and dressed up and stuffy, you know, clothes that are like tight and just stuffy and quiet, and just the lack of color. And I mean, it's just, I think it's a correlation between her and the negative attributes that I find about, or what's lacking when it comes to white people. Even though they put it on a pedestal, like that's what's popular and that's what's good, I think that it's letting you know, like, that's what's actually is negative, like that's what's bad.
Must be white identified.
Yes.
If I'm recalling correctly, when Pecola noticed that the black cat had blue eyes. She almost, it was kind of like Toni was saying, she went into a trance, and and I kind of felt like maybe Pecola was thinking, oh, there is hope. You can be black, the black cat, a black person, and have blue eyes. It was like she was transfixed that this black cat had blue eyes, and it made me think like maybe she was thinking there is hope. It is possible.
Well, I thought it was a sympathetic moment. Like the cat was sort of like, because it said that the cat rubbed itself against her legs. Like typically a cat is gonna come and rub up against you when it wants attention or sort of like trying to bond with you. And I thought that it was kind of like the cat was coming to her in sympathy, because the cat is also a victim of who was victimizing her. Like the cat is kind of rubbing up against her legs, like, I feel you. He do the same thing to me. It's crazy.
Great dialogue.
That cat is very symbolic. Go ahead, Gus.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with the symbolism of the black cat with the blue eye, and its relationship with the mother, and how intimate that relationship is with Geraldine, and then who's so repressed, and then Pecola, who is so abused, but that's that one moment in which she can experience some tenderness before she's completely terrorized.
But it was ironic that Geraldine had, this adoration for this cat, even to the jealousy of the son. So she had this adoration for this black cat, but she had this malice towards, black Pecola.
And I think it's interesting how Pecola, and it's like she's always alone. Like it's been a couple of scenes where it like picks up with her, and she's like somewhere, she's just like randomly by herself, easy prey, easy victim. But it just it just picks up, and like she's alone by herself. And then to have that in my mind, and then listen to the mom's description of her appearance. It's like that moment where she gives the description of what Pecola looks like as far as her clothes, her shoes, just her whole demeanor. It's like, that's devastating. That's a little girl, and that's the way that she's walking around in the streets alone by herself.
Right, because when you're feeling that kind of devastation about your very being, you're looking for any place of acceptance, and that was and is very dangerous. It continues to happen.
What stood out to me when I was thinking about the black cat with the blue eyes is recently I saw a picture of this actor Michael Ealy, I think that's his name, and he played in For Colored Girls, and he's a black male, and he has blue eyes, and a black female who was around me, she was like, oh my God, he's so gorgeous. So I was like, well, what's so gorgeous about him? Oh, he's so gorgeous. And they were showing the cast of the male characters who were in the movie. And I was like, well, I think this guy over here is more attractive than him. Oh, no, he's not attractive. And I'm like, well, what's so attractive about this person? And she talked around it for the longest of time. And then finally she said, those eyes are so beautiful.
I highly disagree. I think Quincy Jones' son has, I think he has blue eyes.
There was somebody There was somebody new that called in, and we're at the 3 hour mark anyway. The person that called in from block number, did you have something you wanted to get in before we wrap up?
I just wanted to bring out a couple of points as quickly as possible. Within the global system of racism, white supremacy, we have been, meaning non-white people, but specifically black people, we have been instilled over generations with a tremendous amount of shame and imbalance and absolute insanity on different levels. And then in the book, Toni Morrison refers to the funkiness, the funk that these women fight and battle to their graves. It took me into a lot of what I've seen in black churches when I was there as a child. And Toni Morrison talks about the inviolable world that the women build even against their men. And to have this man to touch or feel too much of him, she considers him an intruder. And in the black church, when you see that there can sometimes be as many as 80% women as opposed to the male congregation in the church, and to understand that the way these women are acting, they are in essence considering a lot of the men to be intruders, and that Jesus figure is the husband. The Jesus figure is going to save them from being funky. The Jesus figure is going to save them from being niggers. It's just, this book is absolutely profound. And I also wanted to quickly mention, going back to the storekeeper, and the storekeeper, and talking about how he's seeing this little girl and how she's nothing to see. She's not desirable. She's not necessary. And there's the total absence of human recognition. So when you understand that we have had for over 500 years of not even being recognized as human, then of course we're going to look at ourselves as being less than. Because there's been no healing, there's been no therapy, there has been nothing to help us to grow into fully expressed human beings. And hurt people, as Dr. Wellston says, hurt people hurt. That's why the boy did what he did to Pecola, why he did what he did to Cat, why his mother did what she did to her husband, to her son, and it never stops, and it will continue on and on and on unless you have people who are codified enough to stop it. That's the only way it's going to continue, because I don't think, from my observations, as humble as they are, I don't think racist man, racist woman, racist child, I don't think they're stopping. And we are foolish to expect them to. So the book is just powerful. I mean, I have like 3 pages of stuff I've written down, and wow, it's just, where do we start? Do we start with the color sickness? Do we start with colored people as opposed to niggers? You know, just on and on down the list of things that, where you can look at the damage and how we then internalize it and pour it onto each other. If I have a minute, I work with a lady who's like 57 years old. She grew up in Newport News, Virginia. She maintains that she grew up and there was no racism in her community. Newport News, Virginia, 57 years of age. She says she's never experienced it. She says she has a healthy self-esteem, but in the corporate environment that we work in, she's been known to go to the parties, the so-called Christmas parties and other parties, to become so inebriated that she urinates on herself. Mm-hmm. But she's never experienced racism. That's all I have to say.
Wow. Having been born in Virginia, the land where the Civil War ended, that just speaks volumes to the astronomical levels of denial that black people have as a result of what white people have done to us. Wow. I think used that illustration yesterday. They closed the schools. That would be in her lifetime. It didn't happen in my lifetime. I had to read about it, but I mean, if she's that old, that happened in her lifetime, where white people in the state of Virginia closed the public schools for 5 years, as opposed to allowing black people to get an education. So, I don't know.
I'm sorry.
30-second response, if you want to say something, 30 seconds.
No, this lady said that her grandmother, who raised her, protected her from all of that so that she would not carry that animosity and be racist. And she believes that it has really helped her because she is not racist. She has a good self-esteem because she's urinating on herself in a corporate function. It's frightening. And quickly, the ultimate expression of jealousy and envy is what is expressed with racist man, racist woman, and racist child. They express the ultimate forms of jealousy, envy, hatred, malice. You can go down the list.
And I would add to that.
Wait a minute. We're in the overtime. Just write it down. Save it for next week. We can pick it up for next week. We will be back tomorrow. Compensatory call in 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Definitely dial in, share if you have any thoughts, observations. If you can bring a non-white person, that would be great too. I prefer they be on the younger end. But, younger, and when I say younger, I mean under 40, preferably under 30. Under 20 would be even better. But yeah, tune in tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, compensatory call-in. Looking forward to an exchange of views, and we will be back. Next installment of the Bluest Eye will be next Friday, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We'll be ready to roll. Won't have as much to say at the beginning of the program. Hopefully there won't be any public shootings that occur on the same day next Friday. Excellent dialogue. As I said, this is what I thought would be great, to get some less confused people to exchange views on a phenomenal book. I would encourage folks to read the book. The audio book is great too, but if you're going to spend some time reading a book, this would be one I would highly recommend. It's not very long. It's about 200 pages. It's widely accessible. They generally have this at your public library. I think you could probably even download it for free if money is a problem. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. We'll be back. Share the book, share the program, and invest if you think the program is constructive. We'll be back tomorrow evening. Context of White Supremacy signing out. Replace white supremacy with justice as soon as possible. It has been time. Thank you all.